Good evening, members, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Council at the Guildhall. Please be seated. As usual, our meetings are being webcast so that residents and other members of the public have the chance to see them live or to view them on demand later if they wish. In the unlikely event of an emergency requiring us to evacuate the building, please make yourself aware of the emergency exits and follow the instructions of the security staff who are present this evening. I'd also like to remind members that the guillotine will fall 3 hours after the start of the meeting. In a change to how we've done things in the past, we will be taking 2 shorter breaks at appropriate points throughout the evening, rather than 1 long break that we've done in the past. And we'll aim to have those breaks around about an hour. Can I remind members, officers, and members of the public to please turn your mobile phones to silent and to mute any other electronic equipment for the duration of the council meeting. Thank you. Before we move on to the business of the meeting, can I remind everyone of our agreement at the July 2023 meeting of full council when we passed a motion requiring the Lord Mayor to remind us all about our net zero target. With that in mind, you'll be aware that York's target for net zero is 2030. We need to adapt and thrive despite extreme weather, with unusual and terrible incidents taking place across the world, and encourage new skills and jobs to ensure just transition. However, this is just the start. With only 1,628 days to the 31st of December 2029, the challenge is immense, and we must and shall continue to work together to address the climate emergency. As usual, can I remind you to please speak clearly during the debate and always to use your microphone. Remember to switch off your microphone after you've spoken. You should ensure that the microphone is directly in front of you, no further away than a sheet of A4 paper, and please speak directly into it. You should be close enough that your breath hits the grill on the top. Please ensure that papers and laptops don't obscure the microphone. Please indicate that you wish to speak by raising your hand. What I'd also like to try this evening, all right, given the layout of this room, and those that have sat in this chair before me will hopefully appreciate this. In front of you, you have a nameplate. If I can ask you, if you wish to speak, if you can just simply raise your nameplate, we will definitely see that, and we'll be able both to count the votes. Thank you, Councillor Hollier, well demonstrated. We'll be able to count the votes, and also when you wish to speak, we'll be able to see you. And then you can either use it as a fan if necessary, or place it back in front of you. I've gone completely off script now, so I need to find out where I am. Thank you very much. Okay. So when you raise your hand, please can you keep it raised until either I or an officer acknowledge that they've seen it. Then I'll call you to speak at an appropriate time. As always, please continue to behave respectfully and appropriately at tonight's meeting. I want to bring you a quote. Respectful debate involves engaging in discussions where individuals listen to and value each other's perspectives, even when there's disagreement, focusing on the substance of the argument rather than personal attacks. Key elements include active listening, thoughtful responses, and commitment to finding common ground or understanding different viewpoints. And the wise author of that quote is AI. Lord Mayor Janet Looker brought you Shakespeare, and I bring you Google's artificial intelligence. With that in mind, I would like us to have a good, productive debate, giving as many members as possible the opportunity to have their say. To help us get through business effectively tonight, I'd be grateful if we could keep the meeting focused and to the point. I will keep us on track if I feel that we're losing focus. Item number 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Merritt and Councillor Smalley. Do members have any apologies to report? No. Okay. Item number 2, declarations of interest. May I ask all members who have a personal, prejudicial or disclosable pecuniary interest in any of the business to be discussed at tonight's meeting to declare your interest now if you have not already done so. In advance, sorry, if you've not already done so, in advance on your register of interest. Councillor Kilbane.
Also testing out the new system, Lord Mayor, and it seems to work. As members will know from many previous declarations, I have a pecuniary interest in a business that trades on Bishopthorpe Road. I have asked for guidance from the monitoring officer as to whether or not I can take part in the debate at item 14.2 today, and I have clearance to continue in that debate. But for openness and transparency, as I always do when these issues are discussed, I'm bringing people's attention to that interest.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane. Councillor Eyre.
Just wonder if we could, Council could be privy to the advice from the monitoring officer. How's that?
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said there, Councillor. I'm so sorry.
Can Council be privy to the advice that was given by the monitoring officer?
Councillor, I'm so sorry. I genuinely couldn't hear what you were asking. Please forgive me.
Just
thank you very much.
Can the monitoring officer
it's
give
now been
Council...
relayed to me, so yeah, is it possible to hear the advice that was given?
Yeah, by all means, Councillor. Because the item under debate is a general point about 30-minute parking restrictions across wherever they may have been, rather than specifically relating to Bishopthorpe Road only, it is not a direct impact on Councillor Kilbane's interest. If it had solely been targeted towards restrictions on Bishopthorpe Road, then absolutely Councillor Kilbane would have had to declare and leave the meeting. But because the motion calls for an examination of 30-minute parking wherever it was, that's the reason that it's not directly impacting.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have an interest to declare? Is that Councillor Knight?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just for completeness, pertinent to agenda item 14.3, I'm an employee currently of Northern Gas Networks. Thank you.
Where? Thank you. We just can't hear.
They're going to crank it up a bit.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Councillor Knight. I appreciate that. Anybody else? I can't see any name cards flying, so we'll move on. Item number 3, approval of the minutes. Do I have members' approval to sign the minutes of council meeting held on the 27th of March 2025? Just a nod. Yep. And do I have members' approval to sign the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 22nd of May 2025? Yep. Lovely. Thank you. I saw a name card. It's working. Okay. Item number 4, civic announcements. Members, I'd like to take a few moments to update you all on the last couple of months for us as a civic party. It was exactly 8 weeks ago today that I took the oath of office of Lord Mayor here in this most historic of buildings, the Guildhall. In that time, we have undertaken over 110 engagements as a civic party, which also includes Councillor Margaret Wells, who has undertaken civic duties as the Deputy Lord Mayor rather than as turning down invitations. And I want to publicly thank her for those undertakings. Every previous Lord Mayor that I have spoken to has said that the best thing about being Lord Mayor was meeting people. People of every age, social standing, ethnicity, background and heritage. And I have to say, 8 weeks in, that's been my highlight. We've been involved in established traditions like the Guild services and Charter Days, attended services in York Minster at the invitation of the Archbishop of York and the Dean, but also experienced the wonderful diversity of our city whilst celebrating Africa Day, York Pride, the Our City Festival and the Dragon Boat Race last weekend. The citizenship ceremonies have also added to the diversity as we've welcomed men, women and children who want to identify as British and add to the multicultural diversity we value so much in our city. Our residents are the lifeblood of our community, and I was privileged to send a birthday card and letter to our oldest resident, Dorothy Allardyce, who turned 107 on the day that I became Lord Mayor. But I've also welcomed our newest resident, baby Ronnie, when his parents attended the register office to register his birth. We've seen the very best of our community spirit on display in fetes, fairs and functions, visited charities whose selfless volunteers give of their time and resources for the sake of others. We've continued to foster links with our armed forces and attended the Kohima Memorial Service, where we were joined by a delegation from the Japanese Embassy. We've celebrated the city's sporting achievements through the Sports Awards and our links with York City Football Club, who narrowly missed out on promotion despite a record-breaking points tally last season in the National League. And the York City Knights, whose recent trophy win at Wembley will be celebrated with a reception at the Mansion House once it's reopened following the latest refurbishment. In my acceptance speech as Lord Mayor, I made commitment to visit every school and college in York. No mean feat when you realise that there are over 60 schools and colleges in the city. So far, I've visited 20 of them and have been particularly touched by the reception from the children, all eager to see the Lord Mayor and ask probing questions such as, what's your favourite colour? What do you have for breakfast? And possibly the one that stumped me the most as a 63-year-old man, what's your favourite video game? These young people are the adult community of tomorrow, and it's important to tell them about our civic heritage. And one day, one of them might be sat in this very chair as the 850th Lord Mayor of York. I want to thank the council officers for their help, guidance and support so far, and in particular to our PA, Tash Kenway, who really has kept us on track and ensured we discharge our civil duties to the best of our abilities. In short, the last 8 weeks have been a wonderful whirlwind of once-in-a-lifetime experiences, and here's to the next 44. Thank you. We now move on to item number 5, which is public participation. We have 8 registered speakers tonight. Before we proceed with our speakers, I would just like to remind all of our public speakers of the rules relating to public participation set out in the Constitution at Council Procedure Rule number 10. I understand that those of you who speak regularly will know these rules, but this is more for the members of the public who maybe aren't acquainted with them. In exercising their public participation rights, a member of the public is entitled to express views, positive or negative, about the performance of the council, but must not say anything which is defamatory or discriminatory, make any personal attacks on an officer and/or member, disclose confidential or exempt information, including personal information. I now call upon our first speaker, Flick Williams, who would like to speak in relation to item number 8, the effects felt by disabled citizens of York on the government's legislative agenda. Ms. Williams, you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, July Council, the 4th since the same meeting in 2021 passed a motion to fly the Disability Pride flag from the Mansion House during this month of Disability Pride. Tokenistic, maybe, but the problem is twofold. First, to not purchase or fly one whilst readily flying flags of other groups with protected characteristics relegates disabled people to the bottom of a hierarchy that should not exist. Secondly, it is profoundly undemocratic to selectively choose which clauses in motions to act upon and which to ignore. Same goes for the SPD on Accessible York. But this year in particular, best forget about it. Let's not talk about disability rights, lest you call accusations of hypocrisy when a Labour government has just mounted the greatest assault ever seen on the safety net for chronically sick and disabled people, with more yet to come from the Green Paper. In case anyone is unclear about the events of last week, 333 Labour MPs voted to cut and freeze the health element to new universal credit claimants from next April. That means that anyone who does not meet the still nebulous severe conditions criteria will be expected to live on £7,000 per annum. For context, councillors, that is 40% less than your basic member's allowance. Hot on the heels of this outrage came the clear signal that the government intends to now attack disabled children's rights within the education system. The narrative is exactly the same. Greater need, regardless of the merit of it, will be rationed. Then just last night, the unconscionable suspension of the whip from Rachel Maskell by authoritarian two-tier Keir who won't tolerate principled dissent. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act 1995, yet disabled people are being betrayed by a government enacting policy that was not in its manifesto. We fear for our futures like never before. In this leaders' report, mention is made of race hate crime, but nothing of the stratospheric rise in disability hate crime fueled by government and media narratives, that unspoken hierarchy again. You don't even want to mention us in the good news, the fact that the Reverse the Ban campaign won a prestigious national award from disability equality charity Scope. Wasn't reversing the exclusion of blue badge holders from the city one of your 3 key election pledges? Just too embarrassing now in light of Labour's national attacks. Whilst only 20% of the government's term is spent, 50% of yours is done. It's sink or swim together, and understand disabled people are the only group who do not yet enjoy full civil rights in this country. Ours the only rights that are upheld or denied through the metric of what non-disabled people think is reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account when that item is dealt with. And I'll call upon our second speaker, Wynne Swinburne, who'd like to speak on governance matters, including the Groves legal parking challenge. Ms. Swinburne, as you know, you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I speak for the Groves, a significantly deprived community home to over 96 businesses and organisations. Everyone approached, 67 so far, enthusiastically supports this challenge. The council imposed massive, unlawful, unconsulted parking charge increases in April. Our Easter weekend petition is being presented later. Under the Traffic Management Act 2004, this is our statutory challenge, 9 pages. It covers unlawful parking charge increases and all our not fit for purpose on and off street parking arrangements, which combine uniquely and significantly to disadvantage only our Groves community. The council failed to consult, nor did it post statutory notices for April's charge increases. It relied solely on a paywalled York Press advert, which breached any possible interpretation of reasonably accessible notice requirements. Our now unlawful ResPark rates rose from £1.20 to £5 per hour, yes, even in the Groves. These increases must be refunded to the 17th of July, when finally, having posted statutory notices, the council's charging position, though unfair, would be finally lawful. The executive member shockingly halted all charges in parts of wealthy Micklegate ward in an unrecorded decision announced only in a Labour press release. This favouritism targeted only those most affluent areas, the deprived Groves ignored, breaching all 3 limbs of the Equalities Act 2010. Lord Mayor, in violation of its network management duty, the council has failed to undertake any statutory parking review in the Groves for at least 20 years. HMOs, short-term lets, infill and home subdivisions meanwhile increase parking pressures whilst parking, many spaces are regularly removed or sold for various council purposes. You will be unaware the Groves has 55% of all shared used parking meters outside the city walls, the purpose for which only to
30 seconds.
contribute to the £1 million extra to the council's coffers. This parking challenge lists these and many more unaddressed and unfair issues. Lord Mayor, the Groves has really been ignored. There is little confidence in this statutory process given the facts to date. I ask therefore that the Place Scrutiny Committee oversees this parking challenge and process. Like Lendal Bridge, the council needs to accept it made a mistake here, refund us and deal with this parking challenge openly. Lord Mayor, I finally deposit our challenge and I'm depositing it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Swinburne. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account. I now call upon our third speaker, Phil Pinder, who is participating remotely and would like to speak in relation to the impact of car parking charges on the city. Mr. Pinder, can you hear us?
I can hear you well, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Pinder, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Apologies for doing so remotely, but I'm actually starting my holidays today. But due to the importance, I still wanted to speak this evening. I come to you with a deep concern shown by many local businesses and residents, the recent increases in parking charges that is actively harming York's high street and the businesses within. Let me be clear, these past 2 months mark the first time since the pandemic that York has seen a year-on-year decline in monthly retail sales. Sales in June dropped by 10.6% compared to June 2024. This isn't a seasonal dip. We've had warm spells, we've had wet spells and everything in between, but none of those have ever triggered a decline like this. The only significant change has been the vast increase in parking charges. Customer numbers fell by 6.8% in the same month, and average revenue per customer dropped by 4.1%. That's not just fewer people, it's people spending less when they do come. Transactions are down nearly 10%, and even sectors like food and drink and fashion, which typically perform well, saw double-digit declines. Shoppers are not travelling by other means, they are travelling elsewhere. This data is from Beclair as supplied to York Bid, and I'm sure is available for councillors to peruse in more detail. Let's talk about the York Minster badge. It now costs £45. For a local resident to even break even on the badge, they need to make over 22 two-hour shopping trips in 2 years. That's nearly 1 trip a month just to justify the cost of even purchasing it in the first place. For many, that's not even viable. It's no longer a convenience, it's a deterrent. We're seeing a shift in customer catchments too. The same data just referenced, the contribution from York Council area residents has now dropped by 2.5 percentage points for the year to date. Meanwhile, the visitors from the rest of the country has actually increased by 2.3%. Locals are staying away, visitors are filling the gap. That's not sustainable, not for all the businesses within York. And surely this was not the intended consequence of councillors to create a city centre solely for tourists, unless I'm wrong. This isn't just about numbers, it's about the soul of our city. The high street is where community meets commerce. If we want to continue to price out our own residents, we risk turning York into a place people visit but no longer want to live in. I urge the council to reconsider the drastic parking strategy. Let's make it easier, not harder, for people to support local businesses, and let's bring York back to its vibrant best. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Pinder. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your holiday. I now call upon our fourth speaker, Emma Hardy, who'd like to speak in relation to the implications of the Supreme Court's ruling on biological sex under the Equality Act on council services and policies. Mrs. Hardy, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Emma Hardy. I last attended one of your council meetings 2 years ago, raising the issue of safeguarding single-sex spaces and your ongoing Stonewall membership. Evidently, this fell on deaf ears, and just this year, the council leader accepted an invitation to speak at a LGBT forum protest organised by Jake Furby. This was a protest against the Supreme Court ruling on biological sex. Statements made by the council leader, as reported in the York Press, and I quote, "Our message to trans people in York is clear. We see you, we hear you, we are here to support you in any way we can. And I want to say to you that York is a trans inclusive council. End quote. The council have since confirmed to me that the council leader was not representing the council at this protest. No explanation has been given and no apology. The council are determined not to see me or hear me or support women of York trying to safeguard our single-sex spaces. If there are any council members left who are not ideologically captured, I ask you to hold the council to account for their incredibly foolish behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hardy. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account. I now call upon our fifth speaker, Virginia Shaw, who'd like to speak in relation to the motion regarding fossil fuel non-proliferation at agenda item 14. Ms. Shaw, you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Global Justice York. We're affiliated to Global Justice Now and have over 60 local members. Most importantly, the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty is an initiative led by countries in the Global South, most affected by the effects of the climate emergency. They include the Pacific Island states of Vanuatu, Tuvalu, and Fiji, as well as Tonga and Bangladesh. The treaty will provide a framework for keeping global heating within the 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. This is the target world leaders agreed in Paris in 2015 at COP, that is the Conference of Parties 21, as necessary for preventing runaway climate change. The framework has 3 pillars. Firstly, non-proliferation, thus ending new exploration and production of coal, oil, and gas. Secondly, a fair phase-out of fossil fuels, ensuring nations with the capacity and historical responsibility for emissions, including Britain, transition fastest, providing support to others around the world. Thirdly, accelerate a just and equitable transition, fast-tracking the adoption of genuinely renewable energy and economic diversification, and including support for countries in the Global South. Vitally, it will ensure that no worker, no community, no country is left behind. At COP28, Colombia became the first oil-producing country to endorse the treaty. Their president, Gustavo Petro, said, "Today we face an immense confrontation between fossil capital and human life, and we must choose a side. Any human being knows we must choose life. I have no doubt which position to take. Between fossil fuel capital and life, we choose the side of life." Closer to home, 19 UK councils have endorsed the treaty, including Amber Valley, Birmingham, Brighton and Hove.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Cambridge, Manchester and London. If Council approves this motion, and I very much hope it will be the first to do so in Yorkshire, thus leading the way forward for God's own county. Speaking as a Yorkshire lass mysen, that would be something to be proud of.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account when that item is dealt with. And I'll call upon our sixth speaker, Charlotte Freeman, who'd like to speak on the same motion at agenda item number 14 on fossil fuel non-proliferation. Mrs. Freeman, as you're aware, you now have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My name is Charlotte Freeman and I live in York. I'm a science teacher in a York secondary school and I have 2 young children. I'm speaking today as a mother and as a member of Parents for Future. Our planet is a truly spectacular place to live, but the very real threat of Earth becoming unlivable, not just for humans, but for countless species within my children's lifetime, makes me all the more grateful for our precious Earth. There is no planet B. Having my first child shifted my perspective rapidly. I went from being unaware and apathetic to suddenly grappling with what's actually a climate emergency. It was no longer the minor issue I naively thought it was, and instead it's an emergency of the most epic and severe proportions, and it threatens the lives of all of us and our children. Rupert Read describes how collectively we are not yet treating the climate crisis as anything remotely like an emergency, and in that sense, the real paradoxical emergency is that we feel no emergency. Last year, I joined Parents for Future, a climate group here in York. Parents for Future is a community of parents and carers who, like me, have woken up to the fact that if we continue with business as usual, then we'll be leaving our children with a vastly changed and unlivable planet. The climate crisis is not a future scenario. It's here already and will only get worse without rapid and decisive action. Burning fossil fuels is the primary driver of climate breakdown. If we're going to have any chance of avoiding catastrophic climate change, we really need to rapidly phase out fossil fuels. So today, we ask you to support the Fossil Fuel Treaty and join the 19 cities and councils across the UK who have already endorsed this agreement. The City of York cannot stop the climate emergency alone, but it can set an inspiring example for others to follow. The treaty provides the roadmap and international cooperation that is needed for a rapid and equitable just transition. The science could not be clearer. 1.5 is a physical limit, not a political target. The IPCC indicates that 1.5 is likely to be breached in the next few decades. This could have a domino effect, triggering critical changes in Earth systems, also known as tipping points. Think of this like pushing a boulder off a cliff. Once it's started, there's no going back to what it was like before. We already see climate breakdown in York, from ever worsening floods, parks closed for longer, droughts, heat waves, hosepipe bans. This is only the beginning if we fail to take the robust action that scientists are begging us to take. Today, I and members of Parents for Future ask that York as a city shows local leadership that we need to see around the world. We believe there's nothing more fundamental than our children's right to a safe and livable planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Freeman. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account when that item is dealt with. And I'll call upon our seventh speaker, Sarah Perkin, who'd also like to speak on the motion on fossil fuel non-proliferation, agenda item number 14. Mrs. Perkins, you have 3 minutes, and I will be slightly more lenient with you, given that you've come accompanied.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sarah Perkin. I also live in York. I'm also a maths teacher in a York secondary school, a different one. I've got 3 young children. I've come to speak today about the Fossil Fuel Treaty and how important that the City of York Council signs up for this treaty, for the futures of my children, the children I teach, and for the world's population as a whole. The impact of climate change is being felt worldwide, and the consequences are becoming more and more severe. Met Office data shows here in Yorkshire we've had the driest spring in 132 years, as well as the warmest spring since records began in 1884. This extreme dry and warm weather follows the highest level of rainfall in England over any 18-month period from October 2022 to March 2024, 1,695.9 millimetres of rain. Met Office data spanning almost 200 years. It is clear from these extreme spring events that our climate is becoming more unpredictable and extreme, and will continue to do so as we continue to use fossil fuels. As a result of these variable weather patterns, growing food is becoming incredibly difficult. This climate change also causes huge difficulties equipping a city to deal with these extremes, flooding and heat. It is crucial we phase out fossil fuels as quickly as possible to save every 1/10 of a degree. Individuals in York are committed to climate action. I run a climate club at school. I'm currently on maternity leave, obviously, but I work with teenagers on action at school level. I see and speak to many people in my York community who are committed to travelling by bike, holidaying without flying, eating plant-based diets, and more to help combat climate change. But we need more than individual action alone. We need systemic change. We need cities and countries committed to action, and this is why the treaty is so important. I am proud to live in York, and one of the reasons is that it's a human rights city. The climate crisis currently impacts the global south a lot more severely than ourselves. The people who've done the least to cause climate change are hit hardest by its consequences. The treaty takes this inequality into account and has an equitable plan for the wind down of existing fossil fuel production. where nations with the capacity and historical responsibility for emissions transitions past this and provide support around the world. On top of our moral responsibility for this, we need to address climate change in these most affected countries anyway, because extreme weather and heat makes more of the world inhabitable. A record 32.6 million people were displaced due to the impact of the climate crisis in 2022. The IEP, the Institute for Economics and Peace, predicts this number to surge. It could be up to 1 billion people displaced globally by 2050
30 seconds.
due to a rise in extreme weather and natural disasters. This will have devastating effects to peace worldwide, particularly as food security is increasingly threatened. I understand it's a worldwide treaty. We need cities, most importantly countries, to sign up. What difference does the City of York Council have? Well, we need to lead by a power of example. It was noted in Parliament this week how powerful we can lead, how powerful an example can be, and we need to continue to do this. The City of York Council could inspire other cities, countries, individuals to endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty and be this power of example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkin. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account when that item is dealt with. I now call upon our 8th speaker, Sean Hagan, who would like to speak on agenda item number 14, specifically the motion on improving equality of access to elections. Mr. Hagan, you have up to 3 minutes.
That one, yep. Okay. Sorry for that technical fault. Sean Hagan speaking on agenda item 14.1 for Make Votes Matter, the cross-party campaign for proportional representation. To start with, Councillor Rose's motion, democracy campaigners broadly support most of the measures mentioned here, including removal of photo ID requirements, automatic voter registration, residence-based voting rights, votes for 16 and 17-year-olds, strengthening the rules on political donations, etc. And some of these are included in the government's new election strategy announced today. But while welcome, such measures to improve equal access to elections won't be sufficient to tackle voter disengagement unless every vote also carries equal value and power, wherever and for whoever it's cast. To create a fully representative democracy, each party's share of seats must closely match its share of votes. So we strongly support the amendment's call for a proportional voting system by ensuring that everyone has a vote that truly counts, not just swing voters in target seats. PR also incentivises higher voter turnout. But let's also acknowledge that Labour adopted official policy at its 2023 conference, recognising that, quotes, the flaws in the current voting system are contributing to the distrust and alienation we see in politics. And in its English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, the government now plans to act on these concerns by reinstating the preferential supplementary vote system for mayoral and police and crime commissioner elections, which is a clear admission that first past the post is unfit for purpose in multi-party politics and delivers inadequate democratic mandates when elections can be won with ever lower vote shares, just 25% for this year's West of England mayoral election. None of the mayors elected this May won majority support. And first past the post is just as flawed for other elections, including Westminster. Last year's general election was the most disproportional result in British electoral history. Nearly 60% of voters also ended up with an MP they didn't vote for, and 85% of all MPs were elected without a majority of votes. Okay. And therefore, the government now needs to follow the logic of its own analysis that first past the post is corroding trust in democracy and take urgent steps to make all elections fit for the future. Rebuilding trust must start with fair representation for every voter. Councillors, please therefore vote both the motion and the amendment. Take the opportunity to show that this council has a strong cross-party consensus for a proportional voting system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Your comments have been noted and will be taken into account when that item is dealt with. That concludes the public participation session, and I want to thank our members of the public for coming and speaking to us this evening. You are welcome to stay if you wish, but please do move into the public gallery to do that. We now move on to item number 6, which is petitions. Formal notice has been received of 7 petitions to be presented this evening. The council procedure rules allow 1 minute to present a petition to council. Petitions presented will be referred to the appropriate decision maker, and the member submitting the petition will be informed of any meeting considering the petition in accordance with the council's procedural rules. I now invite Councillor Waters to present a petition regarding the maintenance of Fulford Cemetery. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and obviously welcome you to your new role. I'm only too pleased to formally present this petition on behalf of 1,100 concerned people who signed to call for regular maintenance of Fulford Cemetery. I appreciate this council announced a fortnight ago taking over temporary management of the cemetery grounds until August 2026. And I think the contribution this concerned resident-led group made by highlighting the Fulford Cemetery situation and raising the petition made in pushing this council to that decision needs to be recognised and applauded. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I now invite you to present a petition regarding capping the number of university students in the city. And please, you don't have the time that you've saved in this one. You still have 1 minute. Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm equally pleased to present on behalf of the same resident-led group petition with 597 signatures as of this morning on calling for this council and the universities to cap the number of student admissions. While such a request is not really within the remit of the council, the petition rightly highlights the impact 27,000 students have on the York property market. So when the council consider this petition, it might care to give an update on the approved December 2021 full council motion to review the HMO percentages for new applications with a view to halving the thresholds, a motion that was buried and continues to see no daylight with no will to implement by anybody at City of York Council. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
You beat me to it, Councillor Waters. Thank you for that. I now invite Councillor Mason to present a petition regarding parking charges. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Obviously, we welcome the administration's kind of emergency response in terms of work to start lowering charges after the public outcry, which was huge. But obviously, many traders want 30 minutes, and that's something that wasn't listened to. And obviously, there was no consultation. Now, obviously, is the time to start having that consultation, and let's have a proper parking review and see what's going on across the whole city. Even today, we've still got confusion and chaos as prices have changed, but signage is still confusing residents. So I'd ask the executive member as well, please, to get on the top of that and get residents informed of what they actually should be paying for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I now invite Councillor Hook to present a petition regarding a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit in Poppleton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Poppleton, like all the villages in my ward, is subject to rat running by impatient drivers during peak times, especially when there are incidents on the Ring Road and A59. Some residents living on the route of a rat run started a petition because they witnessed vehicles travelling at excessive speeds. They see it as a serious safety threat, with lives being put at risk. Accidents have happened, and the current situation is considered unacceptable. Now, more than 640 residents have signed the petition, which calls for a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout Poppleton. Residents are delighted that the petition has been given press coverage today, with several politicians being mentioned, though there does seem to be some oversight by the press, with no mention of either ward councillor. Nevertheless, I am very pleased to present this petition on behalf of our residents. They say the answer is clear. A 20-mile-an-hour zone is needed, and it is time to implement it.
Thank you, Councillor Hook. I now invite Councillor Fenton to present a petition regarding replacing the zebra crossing on Beckfield Lane in Acombe with a push button crossing. Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to present this petition, which has been instigated and organised by local residents, with over 700 signatures collected online and on paper. I'll just read out a few words from the lead petitioner. Every day I use a zebra crossing on Beckfield Lane to take my children to school. I am horrified by what I witness daily. Cars failing to stop or coming to abrupt halts because they simply cannot see us waiting to cross. The trees on either side of the crossing and its poor visibility and upkeep contribute to this dangerous situation. In one incident, I watched a car crash into the back of another vehicle, and on an icy morning, a car skidded onto the crossing. These are not isolated incidents. It's a pressing issue that needs resolving before something more serious occurs. Therefore, we call on City of York Council to take immediate action by replacing the outdated zebra crossing with a safer, more effective push-button crossing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. I now invite Councillor Merritt to present a petition regarding parking charges. Okay, I've been corrected. I understand, Councillor Clark, you're going to be presenting it. So I invite Councillor Clark that petition regarding parking charges and traffic regulation orders in relation to parking in the Groves. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In Councillor Merritt's absence, I wish to hand over a petition on behalf of businesses and residents in the Groves. It calls for concerns regarding the recent increases in parking charges and their implementation to be addressed. I present it to be processed and incorporated into the parking review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark and Councillor Merritt in his absence. And I invite Councillor Hollier to present a petition regarding dualling York's Outer Ring Road. Councillor Hollier.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm presenting a petition on behalf of over 3,000 residents calling on the Labour Mayor, MP, Government and Council to deliver on the warm words and promises made by them during every election for many years now and reiterated just a few weeks ago by the MP and Government and deliver the Ring Road dualling scheme in full with no more dither, delay or gaslighting.
Thank you, Councillor Hollier. That concludes the presentation of petitions this evening. As noted, these petitions will be referred to the appropriate decision maker, and the member submitting the petition will be informed of any meeting considering the petition. We're now going to take a short break. I appreciate that we've not quite been an hour, so I'm going to ask if we can reconvene, be back in your seats at 7:30 when we'll move on to item number 7 on the agenda. Thank you, members. Thank you, members. If you can take your seats. In about an hour. So thank you, members. We now move to item number 7, which is the report of the leader and executive. So I now invite the leader, Councillor Douglas, to present her written report, which you will find at agenda item number 7 of the council agenda. Standing orders allows 3 minutes for presentation of the leader's report and 3 minutes for any response by other group leaders. Thank you, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of York, Councillor Martin Rowley, BEM, to his first full council meeting. And I wish him and his civic party my very best for the civic year ahead. And I'm already thoroughly enjoying working alongside them at events and in communities across our city. It's also an honour to mark the recent announcement of the retirement in 2026 of Ian Floyd, our Chief Operating Officer. And I'd like to thank Ian for his dedication and service to our city over the past 17 years and as head of paid service since 2019. The recruitment procedure for a new chief executive begins imminently to ensure a smooth transition in spring 2026, and I will keep you updated as the process advances. We cannot fail to acknowledge and condemn the active and harrowing conflicts across the world, including, but by no means limited to, Gaza, Ukraine, Myanmar, and many states in Africa. We must all pause for thought for those so catastrophically affected by these conflicts. The killing must stop, and vital food, water, and medical aid permitted safe passage to those in need. We must all do what we can to raise awareness, listen to those communities affected, and work locally to hold our communities together. A lack of empathy, compassion, and understanding between us often has roots, direct or indirect, in these conflicts. York is a city of sanctuary, a human rights city, an anti-racist city, and a proud military covenant city. I will work ceaselessly to do my best to ensure all these considerations are mutually supported, and call on you all to hold to the value that I am repeating more and more regularly, that every man, woman, and child in our city, in our communities, must feel and be safe, secure, and valued. I would like to end on a hugely positive note, drawing everyone's attention to the fantastic news that the Ofsted inspection of children's services found York to be outstanding in all areas. I cannot congratulate Councillor Webb, Martin Kelly, and the officers across children's services enough for all their work, professionalism, and dedication to children, young people, and families across our amazing city. Successes in progression on key city infrastructure projects include the opening of York Central travel routes, the station frontage, securing funding for Haxby Station, the civil service building on York Central, York Outer Ring Road, and the National Railway Museum expansion. I could go on. Delivering for York, delivering for our citizens, and driving forward every day opportunities for young people and the huge level of pride our citizens and my administration have for our fine city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas, and thank you for your kind words as well. If any other group leader wishes to respond to the leader's report, can you just let me know now? Councillor Eyre, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll start by welcoming you to your new role. I'm not sure this is the aspect that most Lord Mayors look forward to, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it none the same. Turning to the leader's report, I reiterate my comments at Staffing Matters, thanking our COO for the work over the years. As I said at that meeting, we do still raise the issue of ever-increasing costs in senior management, funded by frontline staff dealing with unfilled vacancies. Almost half the CMT have seen increases above the pay award, and the cost of that team has increased since 2023, contrary to the £250,000 saving that should have been delivered. We welcome the eventual progress on our sister link with Lviv, while regretting the pace with which it has happened. Thanks go especially to Stuart Paver, David Lewis and Councillor Corwick and others for their significant work in moving this forward. The recent Ofsted inspection has been a long journey, and our thanks go to all the fantastic staff, Councillor Webb, and also to Councillors Cuthbertson and Waller for kickstarting that process. I had no doubt when we first appointed Martin in 2022 and I had my first meeting with him that this would be the eventual outcome. The local plan was delayed for years by unnecessary ideological tinkering by Labour. We continue to call on this executive to commit to the plan and not bow to government demands that would, in the words of the independent planning inspector, destroy the historic character and setting of the city and not deliver the affordable homes we need. That they are seeking to launch a review process starting many years before necessary does not instill confidence. It's good to see the leader welcoming the opening of the new route through York Central. How times have changed. In November 2020, Councillor Villiers spoke at Planning Committee in opposition. Councillor Pavlovic tried to get the application deferred and Councillor Lomas voted against it. We have, though, become accustomed to Labour U-turns locally and nationally. Elsewhere, we see the now familiar tactic of taking money away and giving it back as if it's some kind of gift. We've seen this for the NRM, Haxby Station, and now it seems the much reduced York Outer Ring Road. If there's one thing worse than taking candy from a baby, it's taking candy from a baby, giving it back and asking them to say thanks. It says everything about the influence of this executive that ministers publicly acknowledge the work of our MP and Mayor in making the case for York, but pointedly leave out any reference to them. It raises questions how committed this administration is to these key schemes. The Deputy Leader is publicly opposed to certain phases of the station gateway. The Exec Member for Transport repeatedly refuses to support dualling. This lack of commitment is costing the city and residents dearly through inflated costs due to delay and through lack of external funding due to failure to lobby. One of the key issues facing the council will be the upcoming review of local government finance. I fear this broken relationship will see us lose more money and leave residents facing ever higher council tax bills or decimated public services. I must also briefly mention yesterday's end of the much vaunted Labour headman.
3 minutes are coming to an end. In fact, they have.
So much was promised and all that's been delivered is less and more taxes, declining public services and rampant cost inflation.
Okay.
One of the 4 pillars is now gone.
Councillor Eyre, your time is up. I did give you a fair warning there. Thank you very much. Councillor Stewart, did I see you indicate you'd like to speak? Thank you very much. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and welcome to your second full council in your new role. I think this is the peak of life for you now. You know, all these events, all this fun. A month from now, Sheffield Wednesday will resume playing, and then after that, the weather will soon worsen. So enjoy it and enjoy the year. The first thing I think that Councillor Nichols and myself noticed when we came in, the incredible lack of red amongst the Labour members. We've never seen anything like it. Councillor Coles' shoes are the only contributor to the. Councillor Baxter, showing fingernails that have been bitten down isn't the greatest statement of confidence in the party. Everybody else has, green in a majority of cases, which is interesting. A number have gone for blue and a number have gone for maroon. It's clear the Labour group stands very much with the independence of Rachel Maskell and Councillor Waters than it does with Luke Charters. Just very much echo the comments about Ian Floyd, who I think has been done a great job in his many years at the council, served us tremendously well, and has always been somebody who I can have the absolute confidence and trust in every sort of respect, and when he says things, when he does things. And just to also congratulate Children's Services and everybody involved in that. So Councillor Webb, well done to your good self for everything, and Martin Kelly as well, who again is another director that one could only have superb confidence in, and of course everybody working with them is a great achievement. That said, there's not a great deal more in the report, which is just a series of events, I'm sorry to say again. Notably, the Armed Forces Day gets a mention, so I'd just like to put on record our extreme disappointments at the council leaders banning of military vehicles from the city on that day, which I think was entirely inappropriate thing to do. I was driving home yesterday on the A64, and on the other side there was a Jeep which was stopped, and I was concerned to think it might have been barred from entering the city, but it was actually broken down. I think that's appalling. And when we have Armed Forces Day, which is literally about what the armed forces do, I can't think of any more time you need military equipment to be there. If we're going to ban it there, we'll stop the gun salutes, we'll stop the armed force presence at Remembrance Day. So that's very disappointing. And then, of course, we've got the usual sort of mentions, York Central and Station Gateway, which is obviously over budget, and we're borrowing money from the ring road. I think every sensible person has lost entirely the track of where we are on the dualling of the ring road. The funding's been announced, re-announced. We don't know who's to credit it for. Is it Luke Charters, who was on paternity leave, not doing anything, and then pops up with a great achievement on it? Who knows? Councillor Baxter is smiling at that, whereas, you know, maybe should be clarifying whether it was Luke's great work or not. Haxby Station has been announced and unannounced, and then announced again, and then unannounced.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Your time is up.
Okay, that's fine. That's it, fine.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Can we just put it on record that people on paternity leave are not doing nothing, and that's an inappropriate comment for anyone to make about anyone on parental leave?
That's a very fair point. So members, please, can you please address any comments through myself? Thank you very much. We do want to have a courteous and respectful meeting, and I want to encourage open debate, but please let's try and stick to the subjects that we've got. And we're now moving to item number 8, which is questions to the leader or executive members. At this point, oh, the signs are up. My colleagues are going to, yeah.
That's everyone.
That's everyone. So members, can I just say, the acoustics are not good here unless you have an actor's voice. I'm probably the one that doesn't need the microphone. If you have a microphone in front of you, please, when you come to speak, can you ensure, if you're sharing a microphone, that it is in front of you so that we can hear and pick up what you have to say. Every word that you have to say is very valuable and adds to the debate. Can I also remind members that there is a 35-minute opportunity. So this is the revised way that we do these things now. There's plenty of time, so we have 35 minutes to do that. And so our first question, if you can address me, please let me know which executive member you want to speak to, and then address me with the question. The executive member will then answer. I'm pretty sure we've now acknowledged pretty much everybody's hand that is up or that has been up. And so we'll start with Councillor Healy. Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Douglas. It was reported in The Independent that the Peace Pledge Union threatened to protest the Armed Forces Day if they displayed their military equipment. Will the council leader condemn these threats and ensure that in future years we properly honour our armed forces?
Thank you, Councillor Healy, for that question. And I'm afraid I can't really give you a full answer to it because, quite frankly, it is just fake news. So much of what was printed was absolutely, totally and utterly not the case at all. And I would say to Councillor Stewart as well on that note, the fact that you said that there was a ban on military vehicles is just absolutely not the case. So what can I say? Fake news, nothing to answer.
Okay, I do see a hand at the back. I can't see who it is. Okay, so Councillor Healy, you have a supplementary, and I did see a hand to your right, but I don't know who it was.
Yes, please. Ashley. Surprising answer, I must say. Could the council leader please elaborate then on whether there were residents' concerns and whether any, and who those residents were, particularly if they were part of an organisation, and whether any directive, advice, conversations therefore happened with the military organisations about equipment, as certainly one of the cadet forces have relayed on to myself that they were probably asked by the media actually not to bring equipment.
So I can say to you that of course, there were resident concerns made about the presence of military vehicles and also decommissioned arms on the council land. Yes, there were, but they weren't from any organisations. They were individuals that wrote to me, just as I'm sure they write to many people across the chamber about concerns that they have. And what I did was I decided to take a balanced approach and thought about the potential for any protest from people with concerns about that, no particular organisation. And on balance, with discussion with our military partners, we decided that it was the best thing to ask the Queen's Own Yeomanry to see if they would be consenting of not bringing that equipment. And so that is the conversation that was had. It was a reasonable conversation. It was balanced. And unfortunately, what we have at this point in time is a press that once they think that there is a wedge issue that can drive division in our communities, and they see this issue as one of those, then they started to print fake news. And that's where we ended up. So I think that we all need to think about the language that we use. There was no ban on anything. I must have said this numerous times. It was a reasonable conversation between participants. There was a decision made. Unfortunately, the Queen's Own Yeomanry therefore decided not to attend. They were more than welcome to, and that is all I can tell you. There's nothing more to it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Mason, you did have your hand up. Is that a supplementary to this question?
It is, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Will the leader commit to a cross-party review for next year's Armed Forces Day to make sure we can get an appropriate location, get it on the date that everyone else is celebrating it, and plan something that we feel is appropriate for a city with such a military history and with so many veterans living here?
Yes, Councillor Mason, on that. So I don't know whether others were aware, but the plan was to have a similar day as happened in 24 rather, the football game at the community stadium. And that was really well attended. But unfortunately, because of the Women's Rugby World Cup coming to York this year, the stadium had to raise the pitch and reseed earlier than they would do in an average year. So hence that event couldn't take place. So the officers, the team have already booked that date in for a similar time period. It will be in early July, I believe, and everybody's thoroughly looking forward to getting back to that. And I also must mention to everybody as well that our military partners, including the garrison, our Armed Forces Covenant liaison officer from Imphal Barracks, there was a joint decision made a couple of years ago now that Armed Forces Day in York should be about a day that people who are in the armed forces and their families can come together and have a day that gives them a day off from their work. So anything that requires them to bring equipment or participate in a parade was actively decided against in order to have a more informal, fun day to allow people to celebrate, enjoy with their families. And so we're looking forward to getting on with that next year, and the arrangements are in place already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, point of order.
I'm not sure it's the sound, but that was in no way the question that was asked. The question that was asked was, would there be a cross-party working group set up? Not, can the council leader list lots of potential events that may occur?
It's already organised, Councillor Stewart. So yeah, unfortunately, the horse has bolted on this one.
Okay, we're going to move on. Just so you're aware, members, that one question is 6 minutes. We have 35 minutes. I'm going to call Councillor Clark, please, for your second question. If you can let me know what the question is and who it's to.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. That caught me by surprise. I thought I was way down the list. So my question is to Councillor Webb. There has been much made in recent months of the council's outstanding in all areas Ofsted judgment for children's services. It's been mentioned a few times. I'll mention it again. Outstanding in all areas. While this is fantastic and very welcome news, can the executive member outline some of the areas that needed addressing to ensure our services matched what we expect for our children and young people?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. I'm obviously very, very happy to talk about our outstanding Ofsted result. I was gutted that I couldn't talk to you about it at the last council meeting. I know that all councillors at that point did know about it, but we weren't allowed to for timing reasons. I think that it's important to remember that the last inspection under the Liberal Democrats and the Greens was a requires improvement judgment. We're the only authority in 9 years to move from requires improvement to outstanding. And I think that, thank you, Councillor Nelson. I've got one fan. I think that the key thing, the key change that took place that's really important for members is around corporate parenting. And that's something that it is important to mention here. I've mentioned corporate parenting before, that we should all take that incredibly seriously. In the inspection, it stated political leaders and the chief operating officer, thank you, Ian, are well informed about the priorities and challenges. That comes through our corporate parenting board. In the previous inspection, the voice of the child was clearly not where it needed to be. And I'm so glad that we've transformed the corporate parenting board so that I have 2 young people co-chairing with me and they lead on most of the items. And it's a much more inclusive meeting now. And that's really, really positive from our point of view. And I'll just finish with responding to Councillor Eyre and Councillor Stewart. Thank you for acknowledging that this happened. I think it's really positive. Councillor Eyre, I knew you'd claim it. It was inevitable that you would claim it, but that seems to be what you do. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for just praising. I thought that was really very kind. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Councillor Clark, do you have a supplementary, or can we move on?
No, that's great. Thank you.
And any other supplementary on that particular question? Councillor Crawshaw.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Webb, for outlining some of what took us to outstanding. You mentioned corporate parenting, and I just thought that it's an opportunity to reiterate some of the work that's going on around foster placements and placement sufficiency, and in particular, what we're doing to help support fostering in the city.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Crawshaw, for that. What I would say on that is, since this Labour administration came into power, we committed in our manifesto to reviewing fostering services and supporting, those who are most vulnerable. One of the things that we've changed is basically the pay of our foster carers. Firstly, so actually now, if you're on the lowest rate of foster care pay, you actually are paid more, and now it's become competitive with other areas in the region. That is a big step forward in an expensive city like York. We've moved to 4 bands, which are based around the needs of the children presenting into those foster carers. And we've increased the support for those foster carers in times of hardship, which inevitably they will face. I think it's a great opportunity to finish with the celebrating Sue and Martin Hill, who recently, you might have seen in the press, they have been fostering children in this city for 40 years. They've been fostering for longer than I've been alive. That, I know that's a surprise to a lot of you, but no, they've been fostering for 40 years. That is amazing. And I want to personally and put on record thanking them for what they do. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you, members. Can I just, we want to get as many members' questions as we can. Can I just ask the executive members where it's possible to give as brief an answer as you can? So that was brief. Okay, let's move on. Councillor Fenton, your question, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Douglas. So the government's fair funding review is currently taking place. Can the leader tell us what representations she has made to the government on this, and whether, if in the event that we are not successful in lobbying for York's interests, she will be in a position where she has to raise council tax above the current maximum threshold?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Fenton. I imagine from that you likely have been briefed by officers on the work that they are carrying out at the moment around the impact of the fair funding review on York, or the likely impact. And that is still under assessment, as I think you likely know. At this point, it is really hard to see exactly where we can lobby in order to have a positive impact for the benefit of York. But rest assured, that work is taking place, and over, I would say, the next week or so, that we will have a better view of that. And then as far as speaking to other authorities go, I am speaking to partners, other leaders in other parts of the country, and also to the LGA, just to try and understand as much as we possibly can about the fair funding review and impact on other authorities as well. If there are any, there will be some losers and there will be some winners. And I am talking to our MPs and our mayor. So we're just waiting for the final assessment as to how to best go about responding to the consultation, but also speaking to government where it's appropriate. So thank you for that question.
Councillor Fenton, do you have a supplementary? You don't, so we have a supplementary from Councillor Eyre. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It was the second half of that question. Will you categorically, yes or no, if the government allows you, rule out raising council tax above the current 4.99%?
I have absolutely no idea that that will be necessary. It's just not really a question that has any bearing on our calculations at the moment. But one, we cannot raise it more than 4.99%. And until we get the go ahead, I really don't see that we'll even be asking for it. Would we be able to do it? So it's not really based in any sense of truth or reality at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coles, your question, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wanted to ask a question to the Executive Member for the Environment and the Climate Emergency, because I understand that this week, and it's in her report, that there has been some budget allocation to spend on parks in the city, and I think it's up to £1 million to invest in park improvements, and Pride in Place is a really big priority for my Westfield College colleague Councillor Nelson and I, and we were at the Chesney Fields Park at the weekend, and we think there would be a very strong case for Chesney Fields to benefit from this new investment. But I wondered if the executive member could set out the types of investment that might be seen through the Parks Investment Fund.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. I'm delighted to do so. First of all, if I could just clarify, the investment fund is 500,000, but because we've and officers have done a lot of work on looking at Section 106 and third-party funding that we can put towards this, it increases it by at least another 200,000, and I'm hoping it will amount to around £1 million or just under £1 million in the end, but that last part has still got to be worked through. But the criteria that we've set out to use it are fivefold, but they're based mainly on areas of indices of multiple deprivation, so areas which have most need, as you'd expect. We're also looking as a criteria at the age since last investment, so areas which haven't had any funding for many years, and some of our playgrounds and parks have not had anything spent on them for over 20 years. Some items of equipment are over 20 years old, and you can tell, and they're uninspiring to say the least. We need to address some key infrastructure. So because one of our criteria is also accessibility for any project that we are able to undertake, we want to make it accessible to as many people as possible. And that part of that is key infrastructure. So things like footpaths. It doesn't sound exciting. I keep repeating this, but it really is exciting if it means you can get into and out of a park safely and easily. It may include removing structures which block sight lines or which make people feel unsafe in the park, and we'll talk to communities about that and also work on the sort of great work that Make Space for Girls has done in looking at ways that the way the area is laid out makes people feel that it's inhospitable or that they might feel trapped in corners. So if we can open spaces up or make them feel more friendly and usable, we'll focus on that. And we also have a priority to try and increase the number of green flags in our city. That was a manifesto promise. It was great that we saw Roundtree Park regaining its flag this week. It missed out last year because of the extended flooding, so planting couldn't get done in time, but we're now back up to 4, and I very much hope that we'll add to that in the next couple of years with the assistance of this fund. As for Westfield, I myself was out at Chesney Fields last week with one of the council officers looking at various bits of equipment. Westfield scores quite highly on all of those criteria, so I'd be surprised if there isn't some love and attention paid there, which it thoroughly deserves, and I look forward to talking to the communities about that. Thank you.
Councillor Coles, do you have a supplementary?
No, thanks, Lord Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, I did see. Right. So this is where it's really difficult, isn't it? Because I genuinely can't see anybody and everybody. I understand, Councillor Baxter, you have a supplementary.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Following on from Councillor Cole's question, you won't be surprised that I'm going to ask about Hull Road Park. It's a brilliant park, and thanks to the Friends of Hull Road group, they've got a real chance of doing the improvements there that they want. So I wondered if Councillor Kent could highlight what benefits that could bring to my park, and especially in terms of accessibility. We have a great accessible trail, which is fantastic in the park, but it'd be great to see some more of that throughout the city.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. And yes, I know your ward colleagues, Councillors Pavlovic and Moroni's love of the park. I've also gone along to a Friends of Hull Road Park meeting to meet you there and talk to residents. And I've been there on other occasions where it's been so fantastic to see the tennis courts full of people of all ages playing and a thriving community, not least the TCV volunteers who do huge amounts of work there. And I'd really like to offer my thanks to them. I can't definitively say, because no project's been chosen yet, what exactly will happen. But again, Hull Road Park does score highly on those criteria. The accessibility trail there is great, but you might know that one of the footpaths there actually, it has a gap in the middle of it, which means that you can get so far, but then you can't get beyond it. And various bits of fencing in Hull Road Park are also needing attention. I think some of the play equipment is also rather old, to put it mildly. So I hope that all those sorts of things can be looked at. As we all know, all these things are expensive. And although this is a once in a generation investment of £500,000, it won't cover everything. But I'm really sure we're going to make significant improvements to make as many parks as we can fun, beautiful and accessible to all.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wouldn't have got involved, but I heard Chesney Fields mentioned. So I'm just going to ask if any of the funding will be going on.
Sorry, is this a substantive new question?
Supplementary question to what was asked earlier.
So we can't, Councillor, we can't take a supplementary on the last question. So it's either going to be a new question or we move on. So my understanding is that we asked the person who asked the original question, Councillor Coles, if she had a supplementary. She didn't. Council regulations allow us to ask one other member, which we've done, and it was Councillor Baxter who asked the second supplementary question. So we now move on to your substantive question. We have you down, Councillor Waters, for a substantive question.
Right.
It's your opportunity.
The question is to the Executive Member for Housing, Planning and Safer Communities. Under community safety, I note the Executive Member referring to an extra 12 police officers and 9 PCSOs shortly to join York and Selby neighbourhood policing teams. An increase in officers, all well and good, you may think. But it's 21 extra officers across a huge, enormous, ridiculously sized geographical area. Can the Executive Member indicate what this actually translates to in terms of neighbourhood policing officers on the ground in York? For example, using York Outer East, that's the police designation, as a good demonstration, a mere 5 officers cover from Tanghall to Gate Elmsley, Kexby, Elvington, Weldrake, Escrick, Acaster Malbis and all places in between. The constant theme from residents is lack of visible policing. It is a physical impossibility for 5 officers to cover an area like this properly.
So,
20
Councillor Waters,
extra
Councillor
officers for
Waters,
York and Selby.
Councillor Waters,
I'm coming
you just
to the
need
question.
to the question, please.
I'm coming to the question. How many to York and how many extra on the ground in any particular shift, please? And I appreciate the executive member will take some time to answer, but at least he is taking the responsibility to answer when the monitoring officer amazingly states such matters are nothing to do with the City of York Council any longer. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I'm a bit nonplussed not being the Chief Constable, but I'll give it my best shot. Over the York and Selby division, as I put in my report, there will be an extra 12 PCs and 9 PCSOs. There will be a significant uplift. As you know, there's a new neighbourhood policing inspector. Neighbourhood policing forms the basis of much of my discussions with the divisional commander, with the Deputy Mayor for Policing. It comes up regularly at the Police and Fire panel, where we hold the Deputy Mayor to account. So although the monitoring officer is right in that I don't influence the operational deployment of either PCSOs or PCs, it is incredibly important. I get the point that he's trying to make. We need to see more neighbourhood policing. The government have put an extra £2 million into additional neighbourhood policing in North Yorkshire. That money is being spent. Officers are being recruited. They will be operational. I will endeavour to find out exactly what number it is that will be deployed within the York element of the York and Selby division. But the point is well made that we want to see neighbourhood policing in those areas where crime and antisocial behaviour is at its highest.
Councillor Waters, I fear to ask, do you have a brief supplementary or comment?
Yeah, well, the brief supplementary question, thanking the executive member for trying to answer, is he content that 5 police officers in a geographical area like York Outer East is at all consistent with neighbourhood policing, and will the addition of these officers make any negligible difference to that situation?
I can't answer the first part of the question because I can't confirm or deny that there are 5 neighbourhood officers. I'll take his word for it, but until I've got definitive figures. But the point of the question is neighbourhood policing important? Yes, it is. Is there going to be additional resource to it? Yes, it is. Will it make a difference? It will. I firmly believe that. But there are challenging situations, and both from a policing perspective, from a council perspective, and we will do everything we can to work together with our colleagues in the police to develop joint problem-solving approaches, because whilst we can't do everything ourselves, and I will get to the point, while we can't do everything ourselves, we are always better when we work together. And I hope that you will also support that intention, because I know that this is a matter of significant concern to you. And you copy me into all of the emails that you send to the Chief Constable, which are many and varied.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any other comment or supplementary to Councillor Waters' original question? I don't see any. We're going to move on to the next, which is Councillor Culwick.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This question is for Councillor Steeles-Walsall. Scrapping local health watch, West Streeting said, patients do not need ventriloquists. Will the council leader and executive member condemn this and recognise Health Watch's vital role in this city and elsewhere, amplifying patient voices, including those who can't speak up, or write to the government urging a rethink?
Thank you, Councillor Colwick. Thank you for that question. And when I saw the NHS 10-year plan, like everyone else, I was really, really shocked as well that it spoke about Health Watch. And I will like to say, before I go into this any further, that we really are mindful that there are staff, there are volunteers at Health Watch at the moment who are going through a really difficult, uncertain time. So I will try and be really mindful of them. And say that everyone in York truly, truly does value Health Watch. They provide a huge contribution to a community. When I first came into this role, I found that I valued their reports. Well, I still really value them, but they were able to show in a way of understanding and hear people's voices, and people's voices were so clear and they were done in a respectful, accurate picture throughout it. And these relationships with our charities and organisations in York cannot be underestimated. They are so valuable, and they also provide a fantastic service as well. They're not just the reports, they're signposting. And I want to be really clear that we want to continue to engage and identify issues. Our health and care partnership in York is a brilliant example of success, and everyone on this board goes above and beyond for providing for York and reducing health inequalities and working for the people of York. We have been in discussions with the ICB, and they have been very clear that what we are doing at our health and care partnership is fantastic, and shows really effective examples of joined up working. And they have been really clear with us that as long as we are meeting our statutory duties, we can design our pathways and services, and we would love to see Health Watch being maintained. We recognise the new structures are needed, but we will do our very, very utmost to maintain that independent voice for our residents. It's too early to say exactly how this is going to look, but as a health and care partnership, we will do our very best to continue listening and innovating for people.
Thank you. Councillor Culwick, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do. I'm very pleased to hear the executive member taking the stand that she is, and I'm pleased that she disagrees so strongly with West Streeting. I'm sure you'll communicate that to him. Do you agree also that pushing people to provide feedback through an app, and only through an app, will only serve to widen health inequalities and disenfranchise millions of patients?
Thank you, Councillor Culwick. Of course, I am concerned about digital exclusion of people. And this is also something that's very clear in the 10-year NHS plan, that yes, absolutely, there will be more going towards digital, but also my hope through reading it as well is that will free up extra support to be available for those people who absolutely are unable to use digital, and I will continue to advocate that digital is not the only way. People do need to be able to access in alternative ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other supplementary or comments on that particular question from members? If not, I'm going to move on. I want to be as fair and equitable as I can with the questions. And so I'm going to take the next question from Councillor Taylor. We have 5 minutes left in this section. So Councillor Taylor, your question, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a question for the leader, Councillor Douglas. Obviously, Lehman Road has been rerouted, which is a massive and significant development, and probably the first tangible thing that residents in the area can see about the area that's going to change for the rest of their lives. And you know, there's been a lot of history around that, and there's still live views on it, and there's still work to be done to address some of the issues around that. But looking ahead, what work's being done to keep bringing the overall development forward, and what next big things can residents expect to see and when?
Thank you, Councillor. It was, absolutely great to see that the travel routes through York Central have now been opened. But of course, we're all alert to the challenges that will continue for those communities that are immediately around the development, to make sure that they feel that York Central is delivering for them and they are heard within that. And I know that engagement from the York Central Partnership has been taking place, and I would really welcome hearing from residents as to how they think that that's going. As far as the development goes, I hope that people have taken the opportunity to go and use those travel routes that are open now. There's fantastic cycle paths and footways, bus lanes, and also the road. And I think you can see the scale of the project that is ahead for us. We had absolutely commitment from the government about the civil service building that is going to go on there, and that is a key part of the development. It's a key anchor tenant, and it will drive innovation and also investment into the site. So we should start to see that coming up out of the ground soonish, because of course that already has planning permission. The other elements that are going forward are the NRM expansion. That has been given the funding that allows that to take place as well. So that should be starting imminently before the end of the year. November, I think that they are hoping to get the spades in the ground on the next stage of their work. And then also the developers on York Central are going to be bringing forward phase 1 planning application towards the beginning of 2026, so that we can see up to 1,000 homes, including affordable homes, commercial space, green space. So it really is moving ahead. There's always going to be tons of work to do. There will always be issues that we need to sort out together. We want to hear from residents as that progresses. So please do get in contact, but it's looking very rosy at the moment. So thank you for that question.
Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you. And thanks for the answer, Councillor Douglas. I suppose one of the big outstanding to-dos on the list is the Riverside Path upgrade, which bumped up the priority list significantly as a result of York Central. So can yourself or maybe the exec member for transport provide an update on where that project is, to reassure residents that it's very much still at the top of the agenda and that it will be seen through by this administration? I don't know which one of you wants to have it.
Yes, yeah, and absolutely it is very much a priority, Councillor Taylor, but I think Councillor Revilius is likely better placed to give an update on that work is progressing.
Thank you.
So if you can make it brief, Councillor Revilius, we are nearly out of time.
Yes, I had a briefing from officers recently, and I'm very happy to talk to you further about that, because I can only say a short amount now. But we're progressing towards detailed design by the end of this year. In the meantime, they're carrying out embankment stability, looking at reinforcing the concrete of the riverbank, which needs to be done in parallel. And yeah, this summer, so that's getting started this summer. And they're also looking at removing some sort of underground storage with the Environment Agency. So that is also taking place this summer. So they're sort of doing all the groundwork and moving forward with the traffic regulation order as well. So that will come to a decision session soon. So it's all progressing. We've got the offices in place and we are trying to bring that forward as fast as possible.
Thank you. And finally, do we have any supplementary questions to Councillor Taylor's original question? So, Councillor Widdowson.
Just building on the answer that Councillor Douglas said, Mayor, can you confirm that the civil service jobs that are being brought to the site are new civil service jobs. They're not being moved from one place to another.
I know what you mean.
It was purely, right, thank you. It was purely
Okay.
based on your answer saying that it
Yeah,
would be
okay,
moved.
thank you. So 2,600 jobs is the capacity of that building. We, at this point, are expecting that there will be a majority of new jobs in York, but there are already civil service jobs in York, where, particularly at King's Pool. And so we are waiting to see quite what's being moved over to York Central, but those plans haven't been finalised yet. So it's still a good chunk of new jobs, which is great.
Thank you, members. That concludes the questions, and we're now going to move on to agenda item number 9. At this point, I want to welcome Councillor Vasey to the meeting. I appreciate that you came in there, and we want to welcome you. Item number 9, the Audit and Governance Committee Chair's Annual Report 2023-24 and 2024-2025. I now invite Councillor Hollier, the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, to move receipt of his report set out in the Council papers.
Moved, Lord Mayor.
May I have a seconder? Councillor Burton. Okay. Does anybody wish to debate this report? If not, do I have council's approval just to agree with that? We're happy to agree that? Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the next item, which is item number 10, the scrutiny report, the report of the chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I now invite Councillor Fenton, the chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, to move receipt of his report set out in the council papers. Councillor Fenton.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
And may I have a seconder to that? Yep. Councillor Burton. Does anybody wish to debate that report? Or is council happy for me to agree that? Or is council happy to agree that? Yep, lovely, thank you. We'll now move on to the next item, which is item number 11. Slightly odd one for me. This is the report of the Joint Standards Committee 2024-2025. I now invite the new chair of the current Joint Standards Committee, Councillor Runciman, to move receipt of the annual report of the committee as set out in the council papers. Councillor Runciman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I formally move it, but I'd also like to add my thanks to you for your chairmanship.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Yep, Councillor Fisher, thank you. Does anybody wish to debate that report? And is council happy to agree? Right. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next item, item number 12, recommendations of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee, primary licensing. I now invite Councillor Melly to move the recommendations of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee to council from the Licensing and Regulatory Committee meeting held on the 10th of April 2025 as contained in the minutes of that meeting and report set out in the council agenda and agenda supplements. Councillor Melly.
Moved, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. May I have a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Colwick, thank you very much. I now invite debate on the recommendations. Please indicate if you wish to speak, and when called upon, say clearly which recommendation you wish to comment upon. Forgive me, the correction was Councillor Cuthbertson that had seconded that. So apologies to Councillor Cuthbertson and to Councillor Colwick. I don't see anyone wishing to debate, and therefore it's pointless to ask Councillor Melly if she has a reply. I'll now take a vote on the recommendations in minute 95, which seeks approval to agree the implementation, then to implement the fees shown in the published report. All those wishing to vote for the recommendations, please raise your hand now. Okay, thank you, members. That does appear to be unanimous. That concludes the Licensing and Regulatory Committee recommendations. And then item number 13, we now come to agenda item 13, appointments and changes to membership. I have a correction to the list of appointments in the council papers. The nomination of Councillor Rose to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority Scrutiny Committee should read as a substitute rather than as a full member of that committee. Subject to that correction, do I have council's agreement to note the appointments and changes to membership set out in the council's agenda and supplementary papers? Yeah, thank you, members. We're now going to take another break, and if I can ask you to be back here at 8:35, that gives us 10 minutes. 8:35, back here to move on to the next item, which will be the motions on notice. Thank you, members. In an attempt to be able to see you all, because that's been really difficult this evening, and I've apologised to members that I've not been able to see. I'm going to do this next bit stood up, which puts me at a slight disadvantage because I can't get the nudge or the comments from the monitoring officer. So do please bear with me, but I'd rather be stood up so that I can see you and give you opportunity to speak where necessary. I have a wonderful vista in front of me now. I can see pretty much all of you. So maybe this is the way forward, who knows? We now move to agenda item number 14 to consider 3 motions on notice submitted under Standing Orders B10. These are included in the list of notices of motions and amendments contained in the agenda supplement. So I now call upon Councillor Rose to move the first motion on improving equality of access to elections. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As Sean indicated in public participation, I got a notification on my phone about 8 hours ago that told me some news. Apparently, the government was sneakily reading the council motion and agreed there was a need for systemic change. So I had to rewrite this speech from scratch quite late. I'm extremely pleased to propose this motion about closing the democratic gap among residents in York and beyond. This is a motion that doesn't dive into supporting specific changes, but rather calls upon our government to listen to expertise and evidence and recognise the need for change, which they have thankfully done, and to recognise ourselves that we can take practical steps. Scotland and Wales have been granted powers that we in England have not. And after the mess made by the 2022 Elections Act, a number of local authorities have passed motions to move towards an equal voting rights approach. Today's announcement is that England will be brought into line with Scotland and Wales on which ages can vote, but sadly not on the issues highlighted in this motion. January saw the publication of the IPPR report that took lessons from recent local and regional elections and last summer's general election, which was the general election with the lowest turnout of the last century. It's good that the government has said they're backing some of these recommendations, but there are many more they should consider. Here in York, we have already passed specific motions on photo ID and accessibility and other disenfranchisement, but this motion is a wider, uncontroversial one to support the need for systemic overarching change backed by expertise and evidence. As the motion highlights, there are many demographics that vote less frequently in York for a whole host of reasons, and I'm sure we all regularly meet people who explain their reasoning to us. Some are demographically linked, some are unique to the individual, and some are simply practical ones like not knowing that they're eligible to vote or that they already have the right type of ID. The government has proposed some changes, but they haven't announced an intention to introduce clear and consistent rules across all residents. This motion just asks for England to be brought into alignment with Scotland and Wales and encouraging national and local engagement with the IPPR recommendations without supporting specific recommendations. Closer to home, we also need to recognise that there are things in York we can do within the current system. That isn't just on election day, but there are other specific local challenges that can be down to local organisations' policies, such as the speed of registering tenants to vote after they move in, or cultural reasons that vary substantially across the city. National changes, potentially including automated registration, might only come into effect by 2029. This motion commits to looking at what we can implement locally before York's next elections. Engaging with the city's biggest landlords helps us to look at more efficient ways of maximising the number of people registered to vote on an ongoing basis, which may improve things above and beyond hypothetical national changes. This motion doesn't ask us to sign up to the specific IPPR proposals, each of which we could debate for several days. It simply recognises the ongoing difficulties in maximising voter turnout and identify ways York can improve, which I am hopeful is something that can get universal support in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Rose for bringing forward this motion, which I think is a motion that is in all of our interests in this room. The impact of improved access would have a particular benefit in our Westfield ward. The motion refers to the numbers who's in the City of York who live in poor or middling health at 16%, but in Westfield, that is 1 in 5 of our residents. In 2023, 14,000 people were stopped from voting, and those were just the people who turned up at polling stations and were turned away for not having the correct identification. We also know that from across the country, voters in lower socioeconomic groups are disproportionately represented in those without the appropriate identification that enables them to vote. So as the most deprived ward in the city in Westfield, we are much more likely to be impacted in Westfield than we are than other wards in the city. And when I was thinking about the motion that was coming to council this evening, I was remembering the conversation I had with a woman who was probably in her 50s, who lives in the Westfield ward, who had no driving licence and no passport, and who said that she didn't think there was any point in even trying to vote. They don't want people like me to vote, was what she said. And actually, I think that the reason this motion is so important is because we do want people like her to vote. We want everyone in our city who is entitled to vote to be able to exercise that democratic right. And the challenge, I think, to council officers and to us as elected councillors is to meet that challenge and to do as much as we can to ensure that no one feels that way in our city. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that all our eligible voters are able to exercise that right. And I would therefore urge council to back this motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Notice has been received of an amendment to the motion as set out in the supplementary papers. I now invite Councillor Hollier to move the amendment to the motion. Councillor Hollier.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to propose this amendment, which seeks to strengthen the original motion by adding important context that shows how our current electoral system exacerbates the disenfranchisement of voters and why this council should call for meaningful change. If we're going to talk about improving equality of access to elections, we also need to think about improving equality of the outcome of those votes. And if we're going to talk about disenfranchisement of voters, we also need to talk about one of the biggest causes of that, which is a belief many voters rightly have across this country that their vote just doesn't count. So let's start with what's already working elsewhere. Scotland, Wales and the London Assembly all use proportional voting systems. They've shown that fairer systems are entirely workable within the UK, leading to more representative outcomes and greater voter engagement. Research from the Electoral Reform Society in 2022 showed that countries using proportional systems have significantly higher turnout than those using first past the post. 77% versus just 67%. When people know their vote counts, they're more likely to use it. Meanwhile, in this year's general election, the Labour Party secured a majority government with just 35% of the vote, the lowest share for any post-war majority government. That should give us all pause. The current system hands huge power to parties without anything close to majority support and leaves millions of people feeling ignored and voiceless. Even the government now seems to be waking up to this issue. The newly published English Devolution and Communities Empowerment Bill proposed reintroducing the supplementary vote for mayors. Why? Because in May 2025, not a single Metro mayor was elected with majority support, and the West of England mayor won with just 25% of the vote. That's no mandate. If it's acceptable to have supplementary voting system for mayoral elections, then why is it not acceptable to have a proportional system for parliamentary ones? That's a question Labour must now answer. So we do welcome as well the government's move to introduce votes for 16 and 17-year-olds and to bring in a system of automated voter registration, which are both positive steps towards improving democratic participation. But at the same time, we're deeply disappointed that Labour has not scrapped voter ID laws entirely. These rules continue to suppress turnouts, particularly among younger and marginalised communities. As the original motion rightly points out, we're left with a confusing and inconsistent patchwork of voting rights for local elections, where some residents can vote for one office but not another, based purely on their nationality. That's not a coherent or inclusive system. So all votes should count equally. That's a basic democratic principle. So we propose the Council take a clear stand to support the introduction of a proportional voting system ahead of future local and national elections, and to request the Council Leader writes to the Secretary of State and the Deputy Prime Minister calling for a consistent franchise for all residents in England and for the adoption of proportional representation. We should add York's voice to the growing calls for a fairer, more inclusive and more democratic voting system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollier. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to second this important amendment and highlight why it is so timely and necessary. The call for proportional representation is gaining real momentum across the country. Dozens of councils, from Woking and East Hertfordshire to Milton Keynes, Bath and North East Somerset and Exeter, have already passed motions supporting PR. These are not isolated voices, but a clear, growing movement led by Liberal Democrat councillors who want fairer, more inclusive democracy. These councils point out that under our current first-past-the-post system, many votes are effectively wasted, and election outcomes often don't reflect the true will of the people. That breeds apathy and disengagement, exactly what we're seeing across the UK. They also emphasise the positive impact of PR on representation and turnout. For example, turnout in Scottish local elections, which use a form of PR, is significantly higher than here in England. This shows that when voters believe their vote matters equally, they are more likely to participate. What's more, PR systems help produce elected bodies that better reflect the diversity of the communities they serve in terms of political views, gender, age, and background, leading to better decisions and stronger links to our communities. Here in York, we can add our voice to this national push for change. By backing this amendment, we are not just advocating for a fairer voting system, but also calling on the government to simplify and equalise voting rights for all residents in England, matching what Scotland and Wales have already done. This isn't about politics as usual. It's about restoring faith in our democracy and making sure every vote truly counts. I urge all councillors to support this amendment and join the growing number of councils demanding a more democratic future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. I now invite debate on the amendment. Each member has up to 3 minutes. And so I'm going to go to Councillor Baxter and then Councillor Fenton. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As the proposer of a similar motion back in March 2024, I'm pleased to see the Lib Dems once again support the Labour group on a motion around voting access. It is noteworthy that our motion in March 2024 was not amended by the Lib Dems back then. Maybe, just maybe, there has been a significant election since where the votes didn't quite or at all go the way they wanted here in York. I'm pleased to see just today that the government is clearly listening into what's going on right here within the City of York Council, and I wholeheartedly welcome the news of the voting age being lowered along with other welcome announcements. While we welcome debate around democratic reform and improving voter engagement, the Labour group can't support this amendment that's in front of us. The original motion put forward by Councillor Rose is a focused and important step towards improving equality of access to our elections, which I know is desperately needed, particularly in wards like mine. The motion rightly highlights the real and urgent barriers voters in York face from voter ID to unequal voting rights for residents to issues around registration and accessibility. The Lib Dem amendment tonight shifts this from being a motion about equal access to one about electoral systems. Whatever your views on proportional representation, and I know that those views do differ in this chamber, the amendment turns a focused motion on improving voter access into a broader call for constitutional reform. This is not what the motion was designed to address. While turnout has been shown to improve with different voting systems, it's disingenuous to conflate proportional representation with the fight for voting rights for disabled people, ethnic minorities, private renters, and many other underrepresented groups. Our voting systems and improving access to voting are separate, though both important issues. For those reasons, while this is definitely an issue that people don't feel like their vote matters, and we all recognise that that needs to change, it's a separate issue and not for this motion, which is about improving equality of access to elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In a letter to The Guardian back in 2019, Rachel Maskell MP said that the Labour Party has nothing to fear from a voting system that ensures Parliament closely reflects the balance of opinion held by the British people, and that she supports Make Votes Matters campaign for proportional representation. And in December last year, Rachel courageously voted for a Lib Dem proposal for a bill to introduce a system of PR for parliamentary elections and for local government elections in England. So I would ask Labour colleagues to show similar courage today, not for me, but for Rachel Maskell, who's had a pretty tough week, and back this Lib Dem amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wasn't planning on speaking, so I haven't prepared anything. When Councillor Rose proposed this, it was to give a vote to people that aren't voting, people that didn't have the ID, people that struggled with the computer. Those are the people that we want to see voting. That is what this is about. I was quite horrified by Councillor Knight saying many votes are wasted and so we should have PR. Votes are not wasted. I'm happy to discuss PR. I'm more than happy to do that. But this is not what this motion is about. This motion is about those that are disenfranchised. And I'm happy to give them the vote and for them to waste it. That's the important thing. Give them the vote.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is not about taking anything away from this motion. It's about improving it and it.
Sorry, Councillor Fisher, can you bring the microphone a little bit closer? Thank you.
This amendment is not about removing anything from the motion. It's about improving it. Let's just remind ourselves, on the 20th of September 2022, The Guardian reported the Labour conference has overwhelmingly backed a motion calling on the party to embrace a proportional representation system. So this is not against Labour Party membership views. That was blocked by the Prime Minister. Many people say, well, there's no point me going out to vote. My vote won't count. And that is actually, in my ward, it's mostly Labour supporters who say that. They don't turn out because they know they can't win in my ward. Now, that is a waste. That is a waste of their democratic rights. So we're not asking to remove anything from this. We're asking to add a really important measure that will remove the barrier to people voting, just as significantly as people who have no ID. And I will support the motion regardless. But we're adding to it. Please don't block this.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I also wasn't planning on speaking, but I feel like it's quite a simple situation, which is unusually, I think that there's actually a lot of consensus on both sides of the chamber here in terms of the real value of having discussions about systems of voting, about how, you know, as you say, many Labour members have opinions one way or the other, as do all of our constituents, about whether our voting system works or not. And as such, I'm sure that all of my Labour colleagues would really welcome your proportional representation motion that hopefully we could even work cross-party on, perhaps on having a discussion about for the city. But that is not, it just seems baffling to me that we are having a conversation about just not understanding the difference. We would all welcome conversations where different people can represent their differing views about the systems that we have in government in terms of how people vote. But what we are talking about is access to the basic ability to turn out in an election. We're not talking about how the elections work. We're not talking about the systems that our elections work within. This motion is about, as Councillor Cole said, our residents who cannot vote because their ID isn't right, or who cannot vote because they can't get to the voting station, or cannot vote because their nationality isn't represented or allowed to vote because of their kind of status. It is about people physically being able to come into our polling stations and vote within our current system. The motion that you're talking about is just a different motion. There's not even a massive disagreement here. I don't think there's a big debate. I don't think there's a big kind of argument to be had. I think it's just that we are talking about one thing and another thing, and it's wrong to conflate them. It's wrong to conflate people's access to the systems we have with the systems themselves, which may or may not work for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Do any other members wish to speak at this point? I don't see any hands. Councillor Rose, would you like to reply?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Thank you to the Lib Dems for, I guess, engaging positively with this motion. However, as I said, the purpose of this motion was specifically to endorse general change at a national level using the independent report without supporting individual changes, and to look at what aspects of it we can implement locally. This motion in my speech referenced the IPPR report from 2nd of January. That report has a whole section on electoral reform, but says, quote, a full discussion of the electoral system for UK general elections is beyond the scope of this paper. Likewise, it's beyond the scope of the motion before us today. The report does note that moving to a proportional system is increasing in popularity, and as Sean noted in public participation, the National Labour Conference voted to support it too, and the government has proposed scrapping first past the post for regional elections and is moving forward with it, something that the Lib Dems failed to do when they were in government. And that, in fairness, Blair's Labour government failed to do too, and the Conservatives introduced new first past the post elections instead of removing them. But it's a bit of a cheek from the Lib Dems tonight talking about Labour U-turns, when the biggest reason we haven't had another coalition was a U-turn on every single policy in their manifesto when they got in power, including this one. But getting into specific national suggestions isn't the intent of the motion. I don't want us to get bogged down with whether 16-year-olds should vote, whether polling station workers should be more like a jury system, any of the multiple electoral reform options in the IPPR report. As has been said repeatedly, the intention of this motion here is to find that universal common ground to improve the democracy for our residents here in York. So I apologise. I think that the amendment slightly muddies the waters of this motion, even though there isn't, as you can hear, much of a disagreement between the sides on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Councillor Rose. I'm now going to take a vote on the amendment. Okay, so if you wish to vote for the amendment, please raise your hand. Keep your hand as raised as you're able to until we've done the count, and then we'll move on to the next option. So if you want to vote for the motion, please raise your hand now. Forgive me, the amendment. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. All those wishing to vote against the amendment, please raise your hands now. Thank you very much. And any abstentions, please show now. Okay, thank you. So the result is
18 in favour.
18 in favour.
25 against.
25 against. 18 in favour, 25 against. Therefore, the amendment is lost. We'll now move to debate on the substantive motion as put. Does anyone wish to speak on the motion as put by Councillor Rose? Councillor Lomas. And then Councillor Willison.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I thank Councillor Rose for all the work that he has done on this motion. And I am delighted that this council, this administration's close influence of government has meant that some progress has already been made on some of the issues in this motion before it even reached the point of debate. So well done, Councillor Rose, for that. I do want to speak about some of the many ways that many people in our communities are excluded from voting. In the first election where photo ID was required to vote, I spoke to many residents who were distraught about not being able to vote for many and varied reasons. People who could not afford the required photo ID and felt so dissuaded by the requirement they did not even bother to request a voter authority letter because it seemed like a bridge too far. I spoke to people whose name had changed, and that meant that the name on their photo ID was different from the name on the register. I spoke to people who had recently moved and not yet registered because they assumed that paying council tax was enough and they would already be registered to vote. I spoke to many people who were lost in the complex rules about who can or cannot vote in different types of elections. These were all people I spoke to in the lead up to both sets of elections in 2023. I spoke to people who live in precarious accommodation and work in precarious jobs, and adding those additional barriers that are simply too far for them to cross completely disenfranchised people who should have had equal right to vote for almost 100 years at this point. I've spoken to countless students who were caught out by complicated rules and registration processes. They were perplexed, and they were just beginning their experience of democracy by being prevented from voting, especially with multiple elections in 1 year. I spoke to one woman who had moved at short notice for her own safety. She had no ID of any sort. She had no funds to get photo ID, and she even struggled to get her voter authority because she had no ID. This woman had lost everything due to someone who wanted to harm her, and she was now losing her right to vote, even after finding safety in our city. More recently, I have spoken to people who thought they had a postal vote, but did not realise that it was no longer valid, and they had to renew it on a regular basis. There are so many reasons that people are being put off from participating in democracy, and we need to act now and act quickly to make sure here in our city for our communities that we are giving people equal access to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. Councillor Widdowson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can you hear me on this one?
Absolutely.
Good. I want to talk today about trust. Trust between politicians and the electorate. Trust between this council and the people of York, especially the young. The government announced today that everyone over the age of 16 will be invited to vote in the next general election. This new wave of voters will be looking at who they can trust, who will actually do what they said they would do in their election promises. When politicians break their promises, it isn't just a disappointment. It chips away at residents' faith in democracy and questions why they should bother voting. In 2023, the City of York elections, Labour made clear commitments to our community. They said that York needs a Labour council to freeze council tax. Yet since taking office, council tax has been hiked by the maximum every single year. That hurts household budgets, especially those already struggling. They promised to ensure the provision of free school lunches for all primary schools. But it's painfully clear to every resident of York this won't happen, despite Councillor Kilbane's boast before the election that they had well-known businesses that would put funding in. They pledged to insulate thousands of homes, a vital step for tackling fuel poverty and climate change. This has stalled. They promised to recruit neighbourhood caretakers to improve street cleaning and local...
Sorry, Councillor Widdowson, you're veering off the subject. That has very little to do with the...
Okay, I'll come back to the subject.
Thank you very much.
Critical to people voting is their level of trust in what us as politicians will do. It's not to do with just whether you can get there or not. The reason that we've got less than 40% voting in local elections is why bother? Nothing changes. They say one thing and they do another. If we truly want to increase participation and increase engagement and increase the number of people voting, the first step we must do is to honour the promises we make. Of course, making voting easier, fairer and more accessible is vital, but we must deliver on the promises that we gave to the citizens to vote for us.
Thank you, Councillor Widdowson. Does any other member wish to comment or wish to... Right. Councillor Vasey.
Just a very quick one. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Because I've heard that Councillor Rose has got the ear of government, and that's great. On this issue, if we want to encourage people to vote, I think another element that might usefully be brought up when he has discussions with government is ensuring that all children learn how politics works. One of the great tragedies in this country is that we leave the education system not knowing what a parish council is, what a city council is, how a government works. We learn none of that. And it's very difficult for people to engage with politics when they don't even understand how things work. And given that we're now talking about giving 16-year-olds the vote, which I'm happy to support, let's please try and make sure people understand politics. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vasey. And final opportunity, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
It's been a long evening, and even with my 2 breaks, it's been such a long time that I've sat with your group. Councillor Nichols.
Councillor Stewart, well, thanks for the comment. Just a couple of things. I wasn't going to speak either, but everyone seems very excited about turnout. And I just thought I'll Google it. The Senate vote to turnout worries remain after 25 years. The average is 46%, and yet it's put down here as something to look forward to. The average this century for the Scottish Parliament is 50%. So I'm not quite sure their system's working any better than ours. And I think I like to sort of agree with Councillor Widdowson. People don't vote because we're rubbish. Simple as that. If we engage with them, they'll come out and vote for us. And, you know, so I think, you know, it's easier for a politician to blame the system. That's the system's fault. No, it's our fault. Our kids need educating better and we should do a better job. And just on the final point of the resolution, the IPPR, which there is local discretion. What is the local discretion? What are we actually voting on that we can actually influence? It just says local discretion without actually telling us what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols.
Yay!
Councillor Rose, do you wish to reply?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I agree with Councillor Nichols, and I really want to avoid rising to the bait of talking about distrust in politics from the party that has shared inaccurate information, nationally U-turned on many issues, and a party renowned for dodgy bar charts. But outside of that, I'd like to thank Sean Hagan and the Make Votes Matter campaign and public participation. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke across the motion and amendments this evening. I couldn't agree more with Councillor Vassie. Have I got that right? But it comes back to me to a quote from earlier in the debate. They don't want people like me to vote, which is a gut punch for me when I talk to people. The demographics in the notes section are key to this discussion. Each percentage point represents well over 1,000 residents who has a barrier to voting. And for those who are good at maths or know our city, they'll note many people fall into multiple groups and have multiple barriers and multiple reasons they might think people don't want people like them to vote. We want everyone to vote, even people we don't agree with, I say while looking at a notably empty chair. So I do hope that this motion tonight can get unanimous support from all sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. I'm now going to take a vote on the motion. So if you wish to vote for the motion, please raise your hand now. If you want to vote for the motion, raise your hand now. Okay, and if you want to vote against the motion, please raise your hands. If you're voting against. And if you're abstaining, please raise your hands if you're abstaining. 2.
Okay. 41 in favour, 2 abstentions.
That's 41 in favour, 2 abstentions.
None against.
There's none against, and therefore the motion is carried. Moving on to our second motion of the evening, I now invite Councillor Mason to present the second motion in relation to supporting York's small businesses. I understand, Councillor Mason, there's a slight change or amendment, so I'll hand over to you to explain that to us. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, that's kind. I seek to alter the motion under Rule B15. The original motion included the footfall figures for both May and the first week of June for 2024-2025. Although it was just labelled as May's figures. Since the publication of the motion, the whole of June's figures have been released. So we'd like to change both on the motion, so amendments bring them up to date. Therefore, we'd like to change both points to quotation marks. The reduction in city centre footfall of 90,000 people for May and June 2024 to May to June 2025.
So is this? One moment, please, members.
So, for members' assistance and clarity, the proposed amendment to this motion comes in the final bullet point under council notes. The current version reads the reduction in city centre footfall of 30,000 people from May 2024 to May 2025. The requested amendment is to change that to read the reduction in city centre footfall of 90,000 people from May and June 2024 to May and June 2025.
Thank you, Bryn. So there's no discussion on this. Can I just have a vote if you're happy to accept that amendment to the motion? So if you're happy to accept that, please indicate. And those that are against accepting that amendment.
Okay, so it remains as it's originally written.
Okay, so so that the change that's been proposed by Councillor Mason is not accepted. So we now need to look at the original motion with the original figures in there. And so I'm going to invite Councillor Mason, please, to present the motion unamended as originally listed in the papers. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to propose this motion, which not only recognises the mounting pressure on York small businesses, but seeks to chart a way out of the mess that Labour have created for themselves and for our city. Let's be clear, small businesses are the backbone of York's economy. From independent retailers to family-run cafes, hairdressers and local tradespeople, they give our city its character, energy and resilience. But right now, they're being squeezed from all sides. First, the Labour government's decision to hike employers' national insurance contributions from 13.8 to 15%, while slashing the threshold from 9,100 to 5,000 is nothing short of a tax on jobs. It piles pressure on businesses and which are already fighting to stay afloat. Secondly, Donald Trump's protectionist tariffs have created instability, rattling supply chains across the world. In response, Liberal Democrats are leading the call to support British-made goods and protect our local economy. And third, and perhaps most damaging here in York, is the council's decision to dramatically increase parking charges. Businesses weren't consulted, the promised review of parking provision never happened, and the result, predictable and devastating. The original draft of this motion, which we obviously just voted on, stated that the city centre footfall fell by 30,000 for May 24 to May 25. But let me correct that, as you've already heard once. Now the residents and visitors have had time to adapt to the new parking regimes. The latest figures for May and June 24 to May and June 25 show footfall down by 90,000. That's not a dip, that's a cliff edge. And also, as we've heard earlier, we're seeing more local people not spending in the city and spending less. People are noticing. Over 8,000 residents have signed the Bishopthorpe Road petition. I presented a petition early from Micklegate of 2,500 this evening. That level of response doesn't come from malfrustration. It comes from a community that feels ignored, sidelined and let down by a Labour council that simply isn't listening. We all support efforts to reduce congestion and to improve public transport. Of course we do. But you don't build a sustainable transport network by pricing people out before you've built the alternative. And you certainly don't do it at the expense of people's livelihoods. This motion isn't asking for the earth. It's asking for a sensible look at reinstating lower cost 30-minute parking option. It calls for genuine engagement with business groups, and it demands that the council finally honours its commitment to review parking provision and demand, because this is not just about parking, it's about fairness. It's about protecting jobs. It's about the future of York's local economy. Let's fix this before more shutters come down for good. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to second this motion, which seeks a commitment to undertake some work which really should have happened before changes were made to parking charges early this year, and that's specifically an assessment of the 30-minute stay option. I know that parking is an issue of concern and interest to many colleagues, and I was not alone in feeling let down in March when a report came to Scrutiny, which didn't provide the basis for a discussion that we had hoped and expected it would. I do hope that this can be picked up again in this current municipal year. The rationale for using parking charges as a lever for making alternatives to the private car more attractive is well understood, even if it's not universally supported. There seems to be a recognition that an approach which is all stick and no carrot is unlikely to succeed. And so measures to make public transport, walking, wheeling and cycling safer and more attractive have to be at the core of the transformation of the way we move around our city. Imposing change without even trying to understand the impact on small businesses will not help to win the hearts and minds that we need to win. Talking to traders on Micklegate, they're up for a discussion about how to make the street an even more attractive place for people to visit and spend money. But that discussion does need to include consideration of the pros and cons of a 30-minute stay option. The city of Bath is often used as a comparator to York in terms of being a small historic city with similar challenges around transport. Bath has a parking pricing structure that's remarkably similar to York's, but some of its on-street locations retain the 30-minute pay and park option. So if a city such as Bath can take into consideration the health of small businesses when implementing its parking policies, why can't York? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Notice has been received of an amendment to the motion as set out in the supplementary papers. I now invite Councillor Ben Burton to move the amendment. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This amendment's designed to bring much needed clarity and context to a motion which is steeped in political spin. We've heard tonight from public speakers about the unprecedented threat posed by climate change, and I welcome their contributions. The last administration agreed a climate strategy which agreed the desperate need to reduce car trips in the city if we're ever to meet our net zero responsibilities. However, the original Lib Dem motion sums up in my mind the reason why the Lib Dems and Greens failed so comprehensively on tackling private vehicle movements. Despite the need to tackle car trips, there's a complete lack of practical action to tackle the transport hierarchy. I think we hear similar comments there from councillors. Their time in power saw York be one of the few cities that actually saw cycle usage fall during COVID, as highlighted by York Cycle Campaign. This Labour administration's taken bold steps that previous administration didn't, developing a much needed transport plan that sets out genuine interventions needed to achieve reductions in car trips. This will in turn create streets which are more vibrant and more usable for walking, wheeling and more efficient public transport. This amendment notes that Sustrans for the Department Sustrans for the Department of Transport found that retailers overestimate how many of their customers travel by car by a factor of 100%. Data demonstrates that football for this May actually increased versus the same period last year, which has been amended in the motion with this amendment. Tackling congestion and increasing other modes of transport will benefit the city in the long run. It is important that we continue to explore options to reduce car dependence and create vibrant, safe retail areas fit for the 21st century. Encouraging high-frequency, short-duration trips does not seem to be in keeping with this. Executive understand the concerns of traders and residents and are of course keen to listen and work with them. This has already been demonstrated by the concerted engagement that has taken place in recent months. I welcome the external speakers' comments on the motions and additional data, and I'm sure this will be reviewed further. As this amendment adds, we've baked in consultation and review into our changes with reviews of the impact of parking changes at periodic stages throughout its implementation. This Labour group is taking bold steps needed to tackle the big issues facing the city, and I ask members to support this amendment to add much needed context to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. May I have a seconder to the amendment?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In seconding the amendment, I want to highlight how this Labour administration has taken a mature and reasoned approach to the changes to parking in this city. We welcome the opposition's concern and recognition of the national and international impacts facing small businesses, and I'd hope that councillors across the chamber equally recognise the concerns that parking and large amounts of traffic have on this city. It is this need to tackle the traffic that blights our city, and the Lib Dems' unwillingness to notice this problem that has led to this amendment tonight. We want to ensure that parking charges reflect and match the cost of travel by other means, particularly fares for park and ride and other local bus services. In my ward of Heworth, one of the most popular meetings that we've ever run was about how we can make improvements to the bus network. This is part of that solution. And you've made mention of residents calling for engagements. This happened in a number of ways, including in Heworth Ward along East Parade, another spot with local shops. Petition was submitted. I went to meet residents and business owners to listen to their concerns. I fed those back directly to Councillor Avilius. We talked through the issues and we tried to see if there was any concerns that could be addressed while tackling the larger problem of inconsistent parking pricing and tackling traffic problems in the city, a problem completely ignored by the Liberal Democrats. In the end, I was able to go back to residents and share our rationale for the changes made. Do I think that that has made everybody completely happy? No, of course not. Sometimes politics is hard. And you have to make changes that are not universally popular, but are principled and reasoned. On Bishopthorpe Road, a similarly large discussion took place and the executive and council officers engaged and responded to public concerns by actually moving those charges to the same as East Parade in Heworth. That has happened, that's been done. What the Lib Dems have produced here is jumping on a political bandwagon after it's already moved on, trying to score cheap political points rather than having a grown-up conversation about how our city should be run. Ultimately, there's a choice here. Have that grown-up, reasoned conversation about how we reduce traffic in our city, or continue to do nothing with the Lib Dems and hope the problem goes away and so that they never have to make a decision. Luckily, this city chose to stop letting them make decisions in May 23. We have to incentivise people to use sustainable travel methods. It's good for the health of the people in the city. We'll get our roads moving again. We have to do this in a reasoned way, and we don't need to spend our time scoring cheap political points. Please support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. I now invite debate on the amendment. Councillor Melly, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I actually didn't have a speech planned and wasn't planning on saying anything, but I just want to say something in response to the comment about parking in Bath, because I just happened to have visited Bath in the last 2 weeks and parked in a city centre car park, right in the city centre, and parking for half an hour was £9.30. So if that's the best example that the Liberal Democrats can come up with from the whole country for half-hour car parking in a city centre, it's not a very good one.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cuthbertson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. What's happening here is textbook politics. When faced with the consequences of its own decisions, Labour reaches for its well-tried tactic, a wrecking amendment. To be clear, this administration promised to consult, promised to review parking provision before hiking charges, and promised to stand up for small businesses. Unfortunately, it's failed on all these counts. And now, instead of accepting responsibility, they propose a watering down amendment designed to sound supportive, but doing little or nothing meaningful in the short term. But whatever the motion says, the figures are clear. A 90,000 drop in footfall for May and June combined between 2024 and 2025. That's not growth. It's a sharp decline. It's lost income. It's small business owners wondering how they're going to keep their doors open. Labour's amendment claims that consultations took place, but let's ask the traders in Bishopthorpe Road, Micklegate or the Groves how meaningful that engagement really was. Over 8,000 residents signed a petition demanding better, yet they were ignored because the administration believed it knew best. The administration also suggests it will consider reintroducing a 30-minute parking stay, but only after yet another review. And York's businesses are calling for action now. Let's look at how Labour frames our local economy. Yes, vacancy rates are currently low, but that's no excuse for ignoring the pressure that small businesses face. Good footfall, healthy occupancy, these are outcomes we should protect, not things we should risk. This complacency in the face of genuine concern is quite astonishing. It isn't about resisting change. It's about doing things in the right order. Provide those alternatives first, buses, travel options, the infrastructure, then look at changing pricing in the context of the parking provision review. Don't punish people up front and call it progress. The original motion as proposed was a genuine response to what York's small businesses are telling us. Labour's rewrite tries to dodge responsibility, delay action, and dress up inaction as strategy. We can and we must do better for York's traders and residents. Reject these changes, members. Stand with York's local businesses. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cuthbertson. Councillor Eyre and then Councillor Nelson. Councillor Eyre and then Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak because I'd assumed that the sensible amendment that Councillor Mason put forward at the start of this motion would be accepted and we'd be dealing with facts, but that wasn't. So I'll have to comment on those issues. This was clearly a wrecking amendment. It removes support for 30 minutes. It removes the importance of the parking review and it removes the urgency required. It is a wrecking amendment. It's nothing other than that. It's bizarre that both the Labour and Conservative councillors around here have just voted to ignore a £90,000 drop in footfall in the city centre. Assuming a £20 spend for each of those people, that's £1.8 million. Replicated across the year, that would be £11 million. £11 million taken out of the economy, £11 million taken from local businesses. You may want to ignore that. You may want to be emus and bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. But that is actually the reality. Businesses don't have the option of ignoring that. Businesses will not take seriously an amendment that suggests there's been an 18,000 increase in footfall, when we all know, when the evidence has been presented, that it's a 90,000 drop. For that reason alone, nobody can possibly support this particular amendment. And in response to Councillor Webb, I'm very, very confused. I think basically you're telling all those businesses that are struggling and screaming out to you they're struggling and are in the press struggling, that this issue is gone. Their takings aren't down. They're imagining it. That ship has sailed, it seems to what you've said. And I think that'd be very difficult for local businesses to take.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson and then Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to sort of chip in because I feel like Councillor Cuthbertson has a real point about how there's some textbook politics going on here. I think that I was very surprised to notice leaflets dropping on the doorsteps of my residents in Westfield with an article with lots of really good information about this parking issue in the city centre and a photograph of Acomb Front Street, which really surprised me because none of this is about the outskirts or the exterior areas of the city at all. And nothing has ever been mentioned, even slightly, relating to parking charges in Acomb. So I think there is some real politics here. This is being used as an opportunity to score points instead of engaging with the reality of the issues. And what we are looking at is my husband getting on a bus in Foxwood this morning to go to work and spending 55 minutes on the bus before he arrived at West offices. And I think that there has to be a sort of a reasonable understanding of the issues that our residents face every day because of the traffic in our city centre. And I'm really glad that we're engaging with the businesses in the city centre around this. But the reality is, it just seems baffling to me that we would be fighting to encourage people to drive to Micklegate for 30 minutes, even though that benefits those businesses, when it harms the wider city and all of the residents who are not living in the city centre so clearly. So I absolutely think that it's really great to see the council engaging. It's great to see us talking about our values and the reasons for looking at these decisions. But the reality is there is an issue, and it is not just one issue. There are many issues that come from traffic in our area, and we need to address it somehow. So I'm glad that the council is doing what it can to boldly try and address those issues and to be honest with the residents about what they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just 4 quick, non-related points. Councillor Eyre, I'm sure you're aware, we do not want to ignore the change in footfall. We take the view that, sorry? No, we shouldn't, because we take the view that council meetings should be about what we can influence as the council, and we don't like this absurd posturing of motions. The fact we have that, and then we have the absurd posturing of amendments, if we're then going to amend within, we've already heard that Councillor Rose has got a direct line to government, and lots of things have been updated as a result purely of his motion. So he could have logically gone through changing things with the concessions he's already got from the government over the last couple of days. The second point is, I don't really speak about conflicts of interest and declarations, but I am slightly surprised that Councillor Kilbane being here for this debate. We've had lots of members in the past declaring interest and going, well, wait, for a small business owner in the Bishy Road area to be here at a debate about Bishy Road small businesses and others, I find is unusual. The third point I'd make is about the budget consultation. This just shows what a farce the budget consultation process is, that it gets totally ignored. And the final point I'd make is just on the substantive issue. The Lib Dem motion has 2 items. It basically says the national insurance increase is bad. We 100% agree. And we welcome the fact the Lib Dems now seem to agree with that. Previously, they only opposed it for care workers and other certain sectors. And secondly, it says that the parking increase has gone too far. And again, we entirely agree with that. It is clearly a wrecking amendment. It's always quite amusing when the Lib Dems put on their very serious face and condemn a wrecking amendment when no party puts in more wrecking amendments than the Lib Dems. So the people that have spoken have obviously been practicing their straight face to say that with. But fundamentally, there's an issue here about this whole staying for a short period of time. I think it is hope over reality that you think if you're going to do a half-hour trip to Micklegate, you're going to instead do that on the park and ride. I get my hair cut on Micklegate, do a great job, obviously, of it. And so I park for half an hour
for my haircut, and I pay for half an hour parking on the Ringo or whichever app it is. You know, and that's a trip I'd be less likely to make if we have these higher rates. At the moment, I basically pay £25 for my haircut rather than £20. And people, well, I could do in Cotton Thorpe, yeah, absolutely, but I'm loyal to the particular guy on Micklegate because that's the way I do things, you know. And he demonstrably does a good job, so you know, I'm sticking with him.
30 seconds.
Thank you, but on that point about, you know, this hope over reality, I would say, and the whole journeys of you know, when people make these journeys, why don't Labour just vote against what the Lib Dems have put? Wouldn't that be simpler than the absurdity of a two-side of A4 motion, which now becomes a three-side of A4 motion? And none of this will change anything. None of this will be listened in anyway, you know, because none of our motions are. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Councillor Kilbane did declare an interest at the beginning of the meeting, and it was ruled that this particular motion doesn't specifically target Bishop Thorpe Road, and therefore he's able to take full part. I'm going to try and wind this up. Councillor Healy, I'll give you the last word on this before we come back to
thank you very much, Lord Mayor. If I could be the second to last speaker, that would be most helpful, given what I'm just about to say. Given the fact that Councillor Kilbane has been allowed to stay, and given the fact that he does own a business on Bishop Thorpe Road, could he tell us from his lived experience whether the turnover of his establishment is more, less, or the same before and after the parking changes, month to month or week to week, and also compared to a year ago? As I feel that might bring a bit of context to a debate that tends to bandy around figures when we have someone directly affected here.
I'm going to move on, any member has an opportunity to raise their hand. Hands haven't been raised. Therefore, I'm going to come back to Councillor Mason. Do you wish to reply, Councillor Mason?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, I'll now take a vote on the amendment. So if you wish to vote for the amendment, please raise your hand now. If you're voting for the amendment, raise your hand now.
Okay, that's 23, Lord Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And those who are wanting to vote against the amendment, please raise your hands.
Lord Mayor.
And any abstentions? Okay.
So that is 23 in favour of the amendment, 20 against.
So the result is 23 in favour of the amendment and 20 against. Therefore, the amendment is carried. The amendment is carried. We'll now move to debate on the substantive motion as amended. Would anybody like to speak? Councillor Whitcroft, and then Councillor Hook, and then Councillor Rebellious.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It'll come as absolutely no surprise to anyone that I'd like to speak about the issue of parking in the city centre, as outlined in the amended motion. I must be the most parking-obsessed non-car owner in York. I am disappointed in the lack of imagination and the one-size-fits-all approach that was taken in the original motion, and I'm pleased that Councillor Burton has made every effort to rectify it with his amendment. The amended motion now outlines that lower traffic can sometimes be better for businesses by allowing shoppers to make safer, faster journeys with more walkable streets, and the subsequent improvement in air quality is a benefit to us all. Lord Mayor, the unamended motion read as nothing more than an unmitigated diatribe of negativity aimed at the council, disguised as supporting small businesses. It was so car-centric, I was surprised not to see Jeremy Clarkson as the seconding councillor. Councillor Burton's amendment correctly identifies that transport and the local economy are complex, and the work that we have done to improve transport options, and will continue to do, on this issue deserves commendation. I don't know how many times this must be spelt out to the opposition. Customers of small businesses do not always arrive by car. I thank Councillor Burton for outlining this in his amendment. The motion already mentions the Minster badge, an example of our council listening to residents and mitigating the impact of parking increases for them. I find it bitterly ironic that having banned blue badge parking in the city centre, the Lib Dem group is now suddenly caring about car access. I'm disappointed but not surprised at this lack of direction. After all, not one of the city centre wards is represented by a Lib Dem. They don't see the city centre as the community it is, with people who deserve sensible transport solutions and better air quality. They're happy to turn our precious centre into a logjam or a car park. This motion badly needed amending. Councillor Burton's amendment demonstrates that the efforts to prioritise cars in the original motion are not just misguided, they're out of date. In the 2 years that we've been in administration, we have published our sustainable transport strategy, made fantastic progress on air quality, and demonstrated a clear commitment to the hierarchy of need for moving around our city. I'm immensely proud of Councillor Rebellious and what she has achieved in her work in the transport brief in the face of huge and often deeply unkind and unfair resistance. She has all of our thanks for her hard work. As a councillor for a ward that accommodates an arterial road in the city centre, I know the impact that mass car usage and traffic jams have on air quality. Some of the chokeholds sit next to not one but 2 primary schools in my ward, and I hope to see more progress on air quality to improve the lives of those pupils and all the residents of the city centre, not a haphazard time warp to a less enlightened era. Let's support this well-amended motion and leave the original one spinning its wheels.
Thank you. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We will support this amended motion, but with some reluctance. Labour's version strips out urgency and dodges responsibility. It underplays the real impact that recent decisions, both locally and nationally, are having on our small businesses and our residents. Of course, we could support efforts to reduce congestion and promote sustainable travel, but it can't come at the expense of cutting people off, and that's exactly what's happening. Removing a low-cost 30-minute parking option might seem like a small tweak in this chamber, but to someone living in Rufforth, Hesse, Weldrake or Strensall, it's the difference between being able to pop into town to run a quick errand or taking your business to, say, Wetherby or Malton or going online. When Labour tells people not to drive into the city centre, villagers would love to comply. But what exactly is the alternative? Public transport from the villages is patchy, at best, sometimes non-existent. Similarly, active travel options as well. So, if you want to nudge behaviour, fine, but don't do it after every other option is closed off. What's also been lost in Labour's amendment is any serious recognition of the bigger picture. National insurance hikes are real, so are trade barriers. And while Labour is awkwardly silent on Europe, the Liberal Democrats remain clear. Rejoining a customs union and fixing our trading relationship with the EU is essential for business. We do welcome that Labour haven't stripped out the motion's call to work with York's business groups, but frankly, that should have happened months ago, before changes were forced through without proper dialogue. We will support the amended motion. Our small businesses and our residents need support now. They need access, affordability, and a council that listens, not just when the petitions pile up, but from the start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rebellious, and then finally Councillor Vasey.
Thank you, Chair. Lord Mayor, just before I start talking about this particular motion, I want to refer back to some of the public speakers and make it clear. Ms Swinburne mentioned that she thought the implementation of the charges were not lawful. We've had correspondence from her. The officers have replied. Our understanding, and I am confident, they were perfectly lawful in the way in which they were introduced. So I just want to make that clear. And also, Councillor Mason, the signage has been put in place throughout today for all the areas where parking charges have been changed. So again, my understanding is that has been taking place through the day. It takes time, but it was happening today. So supporting York's small businesses, the title of this motion. How do we best do this? The motion seems to make out that cheap, short stay parking supports businesses. Well, in fact, the opposite is true. When you look at research that's been done on where the most thriving businesses are, it shows that vacancy rates for shops are 5 times higher on streets that have high levels of traffic. And when you look at the parking charges and the places where vacancy rates are lowest, there's a really strong correlation. So vacancy rates are lowest in London, Cambridge, Oxford, York, Brighton, and Edinburgh. All of those cities, including York, obviously now, have some of the higher parking charges. It's not about nipping in and nipping out, and that is not a way to support businesses. I just also want to challenge some of the data that's been bandied around on footfall, and I have no idea where the Liberal Democrats figures have come from, but the Beauclair data that the council receives on footfall shows that when we're taking for up to the point of this here in this year compared to last year, footfall in York has gone up. There has been a dip in June, but there has been up in other months. No one would take 1 month on its own as any indication or any reliable indication of what's happening. We all know that weather, local events, and so on can all have impacts on how people behave. But York, according to the data that the council collects that's reliable, York is bucking the trend compared to other parts of the UK. York is doing really well. And I'm really, really disappointed to hear how many people keep talking York down when York is doing really well. So I also want to challenge Councillor Mason's assertion that we need to make the public transport and make the sustainable options better before we do any changes. Are you suggesting that we knock down the city walls in order to get the buses moving around the city? There's no point putting more buses on.
Chris, you are now on your time. Forgive me. I'll give you a few more seconds to finish.
I see. Right. There's just, we have to do both things in combination. We can't just put more buses on for them to get stuck in traffic. So we've changed the prices today. We need to see how that plays out. And then we all need to actually support our city. The best way.
Thank you, Councillor Willis. I really need to ask you to wind that up. Thank you very much. I'm just aware, members, that we have 10 minutes left before the guillotine falls. I'm going to very quickly ask Councillor Vasey to speak, and then I'm going to come to Councillor Mason, and then we'll go to the vote. Councillor Vasey.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to talk a little about a tale of two cities. The poisoned donut that is actually, you could say, a millstone around all our necks. It was a decision taken over 20 years ago to divide York into a donut with the city and then a ring of villages. In my book, that was one of the most tragic decisions this city's made. It should have divided York north-south or east-west so that the villages and the city all had an investment in each other. And what I see when I see this is the result of that failure. We carry on repeating, we heard from Councillor Hook, in my village we have 5 buses a day, we have no buses on a Sunday. Personal testimony to just make sense of what happens on Bishy Road from my perspective. I have to take boxes, 7-kilogram boxes of books to deliver to Amazon. I take 3 of those and I take them in a car. I can't cycle with 3 7-kilogram boxes of books. I used to go to Bishy Road. There's a dry cleaners in Bishy Road. They've taken on taking boxes for Amazon to keep their business afloat. I've been happy to go there to take my boxes there because I could park for 50 pence, 60 pence in that small car park, drop the boxes off and go on. There are no places to drop boxes off for Amazon in Weldrake, you'll be surprised to hear. You have to go a long way. So there are practical things about business, about supporting small businesses, about cities, residents outside the city. I only wish we could genuinely find a way of transforming public transport, cycle paths, all the rest of it, to make it possible for us to move forwards together, to support local businesses, and to have a city that's joined up and works, rather than the back and forth about whether we should have buses or not. You know, let's try and find a way of uniting the villages and the city to have a common strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Vassie. So I just need to remind members that we are now 2 hours and 51 minutes into the meeting. I've not had a motion to extend the meeting, so we're going to bring this particular motion to a conclusion by giving Councillor Mason the opportunity to reply. Then we'll go to the vote. And because we haven't had a request or a motion to extend the meeting, then all outstanding items of business will be deemed to have been proposed and seconded and will be voted on individually per agenda item without debate prior to the expiry of the meeting time. Councillor Mason, would you like to reply to the amended motion?
You'll be pleased to hear, Lord Mayor, I'm not going to say anything.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move to the vote on the motion as amended. So if you wish to vote for the motion as amended, please raise your hand. Yep. And if you want to vote against the motion, please raise your hand. And if you want to abstain, please raise your hand. We have 3. I think it's 3.
So 40 in favour.
Yeah. So the result is 40 in favour, none against, and 3 abstentions. The motion as amended is therefore carried. We're now going to go to the next item on the agenda, which is the non-proliferation of fossil fuels. Again, given what we've just said.
It's taken as moved and seconded.
Is that point of order?
Point of order, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ware.
Earlier in that discussion, you said that the monitoring officer had made a ruling. I'm not aware of anything under DHLG guidance that would say that. So can I clarify, did the monitoring officer give advice to Councillor Kilbane on whether or not it was a pecuniary interest, or did he give a dispensation?
I provided advice, Councillor Ware.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on just to bring the meeting to hopefully to a conclusion. And so the motion on non-proliferation of fossil fuels is taken as moved and seconded.
Equally, so is the amendment.
And equally, so is the amendment. Councillor Widdowson, is that point of order?
Can it just be noted that Councillor Knight has left the room because of this, the motion, because she feels that she's got an interest.
Okay, we'll make a note of that. Thank you, Councillor Widdowson.
Okay, so we now have to take a vote without debate on the amendment.
So we now take a vote without debate on the amendment. So those wishing to vote for the amendment, please raise your hand. Those wishing to vote against the amendment, raise your hand. And those wishing to abstain.
No abstention. Or 1 abstention. So that's 3 in favour of the amendment. 30.
So 3 in favour, 38 against,
1 abstention.
1 abstention.
The amendment falls.
So the amendment falls. Therefore, we're now going to vote on the substantive motion as put in the papers. So those wishing to vote for the substantive motion, please raise your hands. Those wishing to vote against the motion, please raise your hands. And any abstentions?
Yeah, 40 in favour. That's such a good speech.
So there's 40 in favour, 2 against,
No abstention.
no abstentions, and so therefore the motion is carried. Members, that concludes the section on motions. I have no further urgent business, so that concludes the meeting this evening. Thank you very much, members, for your time and your participation.
All right.